to introduce a new, fabulously anticipated segment of the show. Okay? Now, I don't know if I should say, I guess I can. I mean, it's a public street. So I'll let you, Eddie Garrison, as the show producer or the audience, determine this level of decorum that I should use for this segment, okay?
Is it neuroticism or is it decorum?
This is decorum.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say the name of the hotel. Everyone knows what hotel I'm talking about. But there is, I think most people know that our studio is based right here on Monument Circle. So without getting into specifics on the name of hotel, when I drive in to work each day, I have to, in a roundabout way, pass by one of the downtown hotels.
Yep.
And it is the hotel that more often than not houses the NBA team that is staying here for their game against the Pacers. And I would assume, while I don't know so, perhaps the NFL team stay there as well. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume. There are obviously several very nice hotels downtown. Okay, so I'm not going to say the name of the hotel. But when you go past, when you know when there is a big-time game or a big event in town, because they have an area that when it's really big, they actually rope off an area for the autograph seekers. Now, the autograph seekers, this is a whole different brand this is a complete different, like, almost subsection of humanity.
It is.
This is not, let me explain.
Got to respect the grind, though, Jake.
But I don't disagree, but it's a little bit much. Let me explain. Back in my day, when I was a kid, but we would come downtown. There was only one hotel from 1977 to 1990, there was like one hotel in downtown Indianapolis. I'm being a little facetious, but anybody of that era knows that teams would stay at the Hyatt Regency downtown with the glass elevators, and you could go and sit in the hotel lobby, and as the teams rolled through, you could get autographs or ask for shoes or whatever if you were not standing on the exit ramp of Market Square Arena on the east side of the arena where the bus would sit when the teams would load onto the bus. It was a magical time. In those days, sure, maybe there were adults getting autographs, but I certainly don't remember it much. I was one of the kids, for certain, that would stand outside and in the cold, and my parents had that kind of patience, I guess, or understanding, and just, hold a sport magazine that had Spud Webb in it and try to get him to sign it. Or I have a Patrick Ewing signed something for me when he was a rookie for the Knicks and I was a sixth grader, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The world changed for me, and there's a point that I'm making here in relation to Indianapolis, Indiana, and sports today on the calendar. But I will never forget when I covered the St. Louis Rams, and they had a game on Christmas Eve in New Orleans in the season one of the seasons that I covered them. And so the Rams, very kind of them, reached out to the traveling media and said, listen, because it's Christmas Eve and it's in New Orleans and a lot of places are rented out for whatever reason, and it's difficult to get flights, if you are covering our game, you can fly on the team plane, and you have to pay for it, obviously, but you can stay in the team hotel. So the place that I worked for took them up on that, and so for that one time, I traveled on the team plane and then got on a bus. Now, I was not on the same bus as the team, but I was in the party of buses and went to the hotel. And we get to the hotel, and it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. This was when the Rams were Super Bowl contenders, the greatest show on turf. We got to the hotel, and it was literally 75, 45 to 60-year-old men, fat dudes with sweatpants at their nipples, with like Glad trash bags full of plastic helmets, and it was unbelievable. I mean, Ernie Conwell is checking into his room, and there's a guy right there, and he's got 19 pictures of Ernie Conwell from high school to the pros in sleeves for him to sign. And these are all guys that are doing nothing but selling this stuff professionally, right? I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, London Fletcher, who played at Baldwin Wallace College, and some guy had a Baldwin Wallace mini helmet. I'm like, are you kidding me? So then I realized this autograph thing is a business. So now you have, when the teams come into town in Indianapolis, you can rate how big a game it is, and this is the new feature I'm going to do. Okay? How hot's the hotel line?
Okay.
That's the feature. How hot's the hotel line? When I was driving in today and I drove past the hotel were the Los Angeles Lakers, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, the Lake Show. J.J. Redick is the coach. The Lakers are in town. The Lakers at the hotel. And I'm going to rate. I thought it'd be a little bit more, truth be told. But, in example, if the Washington Wizards were here, there's like 2 guys standing out front, right? 2. Correct. That's what it sounds like when the Washington Wizards are in town. Sacramento Kings might actually get some buzz. They were on late last night. They got blown out by Oklahoma City. But they've got, people like Sabonis, Malik Monk's starting to play well, and maybe you have some Kentucky fans that are in town, whatever, right?
Zach LaVine.
Zach LaVine's there now, yes, although he hasn't really blended in.
Shocker.
I would say for this particular game, I'm going to put, now I thought it would be a 10, but I'm going to put how hot's the hotel line out front right now at an 8.2.
Is that because of the weather outside right now?
The weather is a little chilly, but it is nice. Now, here's the other thing I noticed, though.
Did you notice that there were so when I got in here about, shortly before 10 o'clock, there's about 15 people there, and about 10 of them had chairs and blankets.
Yes. Well, here's what I noticed. I think, and I'm not saying it's an unwise move, but
did they camp out?
Welcome to downtown Indianapolis in 2025. I think that part of those, you have to, when rating how hot the hotel line is, okay, how big the crowd is, 8.2 I'll give it. Probably more like a 6.8, but it gets bumped to 1.4 because of the number of people actually that sleep on that sidewalk anyway on Washington Street, because that's downtown Indy in 2025. So they blend in with the actual group itself out in front of the hotel. But, yes, I did notice people that, it looked kind of like the night after Thanksgiving, they're all waiting in line for the iPhone 19. That's kind of what it looked like. But it's a big game when you drive past that hotel and you see the crowd and okay, the stars are here. And it's the Lake Show tonight. It's LeBron, it's Luka, and I'm assuming that both of them are playing. Then the question for the Pacers becomes, is Tyrese Halliburton playing?
Yes.
And it would appear as though the answer to that is yes.
That is correct.
That's always, I realize they say differently. That can often be a game-time decision. In this particular game, I don't think that would be the case. But if it was, for example, the Washington Wizards, probably more like a game-time decision. But a couple of things to note on this game tonight. It begins at 7:30, not the typical 7 o'clock, and it is aired by our friends Chris Denary, Quinn Buckner, Jeremiah Johnson, Eddie Gill on the standard FanDuel television sports network and station that you watch.
Nice job. You got it right.
Thank you. That's actually a prop bet you can make on FanDuel, whether or not I do. But I did get it correct, yes. So 7:30 tonight, you can see it. It is on national television on ESPN, but you want the home cooking of the broadcast with the faces and the voices with which you're familiar, and that will be the case at 7:30 tonight. A ton of people have asked me this. I mean, a ton. And, Eddie, you may have the answer to this. I do not yet. I don't think that this answer may not be in the atmosphere just yet. One of the things that people love, absolutely love, about the NCAA tournament being in their town, I don't care whether you live in Indy, Lexington, Atlanta, Spokane, Boise, whatever it may be. People love the practice days, the shoot-around, the team. It is cool. I mean, it is definitely, especially if your team is in the tournament. And, yes, I think we know now that the public practices are not where they're going out there and, running the exact sets they're going to run and going through their motion offense and et cetera, et cetera. But, they come out, they shoot around, they do some calisthenics, they stretch, they run around a little bit. Coach does a couple interviews. But it's a great chance for fans of a team to watch their team, see it, soak in, they're in the tournament, and love everything about it. And there are some teams, Listen, I've covered Final Four runs where that's part of the deal. You got to cover that day and show the crowd that shows up. Purdue fans have all asked me. I got a lot of messages today, which I appreciate. Several people have asked if I know the practice schedule just yet. I got this message at 3:15 in the morning, and I love that. My buddy Tyrone Shelton, the nice guy at the party. You look at his picture on social media, and you go, that guy just looks like the nice guy at the party, right?
Were you awake when he sent you that message?
I had just gone to bed. Hey, Jake, sorry for texting so late. Now, that right there, I'm like, Tyrone, you know me. Come on now.
Okay, is that late or is that early?
That's good. That's late. I wanted to ask you a question before I go to bed. Do you know what the practice times are for the Sweet 16 on Thursday? I've looked everywhere online, and they just have the game times listed. Thanks if you have that information. I do not know that yet, and I don't know if it's been publicized yet, but I'll tell you who probably is going to know.
Our 1 o'clock guest?
Huh?
Our 1 o'clock guest?
Correct. Elliot Bloom is the director of basketball operations for Purdue. And you probably don't – well, I shouldn't say that. I think Purdue fans know who Elliot is for sure. He's done a little of everything. He started there as their sports information director. He's worked on their radio network. Then he started working closer with Matt Painter, and he's now the guy that you see on the bench with I can say this because I have one too. He's got a salt and pepper beard, although he's a few years younger than I. Super good dude, Elliot Bloom. And I got to thinking about this. I think one of the stories that is taking place with Purdue is the following. In 2024, the storyline that everywhere you turned around when it came to Purdue was, did you know Zach Edey played hockey until he outgrew the skates? And obviously in 23, it was the fact of, the stunning upset. That in 24, the fact that they broke through, they finally got to the Final Four, they got to the championship game, and that Zach Edey was an unstoppable and unmovable force. And, is UConn going to be able to shut down everybody else on the team? But Edey was their storyline for the last 2 years for certain. And then the fact that he grew up in Canada, watching hockey, following hockey, and then grew into and developed at Purdue as a dominant basketball player. That was the storyline of Purdue yesteryear. The storyline now for Purdue, and this has taken off like wildfire nationally speaking. We all knew it here. We've talked about it here on numerous occasions. I've talked ad nauseum about how Purdue is, and I feel bad for Purdue because it is true, and I understand it when Purdue fans are like, you can't talk about Purdue without mentioning Indiana. It gets old. I get it. But when it comes to benchmark success of long-term national sustained competitiveness of Final Four runs, the standard that is used in this state of the last 50 years would be Indiana from, of the 80s and into the early 90s. One of the fans of that team and that model was Matt Painter. And you are seeing it now at Purdue. And I've said, you've heard me say on numerous occasions, if you were a fan of Indiana basketball in that era and you are longing for that, you don't have to long for it. It's happening right now. It's just in West Lafayette, not Bloomington. But the rest of the country now, they're late to the party, but they were starting to figure this out. And this all started yesterday with, and it may have been actually technically Monday evening, but a post on social media that was put out by just a sports site that listed all 16 teams in the Sweet 16 with the logo for their starting five of where each member of the starting five began their college career. Now, I think Tennessee has 2 or 3 starters that started at Tennessee. Michigan State has, I believe, 3 or 4 that started at Michigan State. But Purdue had 5 that started at Purdue. All 5 of their starters started their career at Purdue. That got the conversation going of like, whoa, the guy that's a basketball fan in Denver, the guy that's a basketball fan in Bethesda, Maryland, the woman that loves the NCAA tournament and is a big basketball fan that lives in Tulsa. They all looked at that and went, whoa, I didn't know that about Purdue. That's pretty cool. And that there was a lot of love kind of being generated about Purdue. Then that was followed up by last night. Same account took it one step further and put the logo of the state, the home state, the high school state of the starting five. And for Purdue, it represented that 4 of the starters are from the state of Indiana. And then it went even further with people like, man, I got to give love to Purdue for just being the hometown school, for sticking with the home product, for making home cooking. In the NIL portal era of the Arkansas and the Kansases and the Kentuckys and, that have people from all over. Those are national brands from all over. And Purdue is a national brand. But Purdue has managed to keep it in-house, keep it local. And I think that the rest of the country now, people are starting very quickly to long for that. Everybody loved the idea of NIL. The fact that college athletes should get paid. They should get theirs. It's a free market enterprise, yada, yada. Everybody loved that idea in concept. But now that it's here, very quickly, it has forced people and created for people the nostalgia, the longing for the good old days of the way things used to be all the way back in 2021, right? And Purdue is the last, seemingly, as I mentioned, in the ever-changing mall landscape of college basketball. Purdue is Bath & Body Works. They're the one store that's like, we're not leaving. We're sticking with what we do. We're going to have music playing, and we are just going to, pump out the scent of strawberries and cucumber when you walk past and walk on in. And we're going to be the last holdout in this mall. And that's what Purdue is. And people have figured that out, nationally speaking. And all of a sudden, Purdue has become a darling because they're doing it, quote unquote, the right way, the Purdue way. And I got to thinking about it last night. And I know that Matt Painter comes on with John a lot, and you hear Matt talk about these things.
We'll be on with him this afternoon.
But when coaches talk, and Matt Painter is not the case here because he's very authentic. And, I mean, you can't help but love Matt Painter. And the relationship that he and JMV have, Painter is very open and very transparent and always a great listen, and will be worth tuning into today. But in terms of the behind-the-scene blueprint guy, Matt Painter is obviously going to give you probably even a humble answer on how they're able to do this. But I yesterday just thought to myself, Elliot Bloom would be a really fascinating person to ask, because he is another guy that is homegrown, that started kind of at the bottom with Purdue basketball, not at the bottom, but has worked his way up the rungs of Purdue basketball to now being the right-hand man for Matt Painter. But I think part of also, he's not the architect, but he's the guy that certainly is going into the hardware store and buying a lot of the materials that Matt Painter is using to build that program. And so to find out just more of the backstory, the thought process, the amount of meetings that go into, the nature of analysis of who they recruit, how they recruit, why they recruit the way that they do. Instead of just saying, okay, in the state of Indiana right now in this recruiting service, here's the top 15 players, let's go get 3 of them. Purdue doesn't do it that way. Purdue says, look, that might be the top 15 as the way a national publication or a basketball camp sees them, but we rank it differently. And how does that process happen? What things do they look for that tells them that a player is or is not going to be a perfect Purdue fit? And how can they see whether a guy that the rest of the country thought was going to be at Akron, and they can look at it and go, no, he's going to be a really good player at Purdue? Braden Smith is a perfect example. Now, I'm not saying Braden Smith was a guy that people thought was going to be at Akron. He's an Indiana Mr. Basketball. He clearly was, his respected as a basketball player in high school. But I remember when he was in high school, and I was talking to somebody, and they said the best college basketball player in Indiana right now in high school is the kid at Westfield, Braden Smith. And this is when he was a junior. And they said, I don't care what anybody else says. He might not be the fastest, he may not be the biggest, but I'm telling you right now, that guy is the best basketball player in the state of Indiana right now. And I said, why? What makes him unique? Just the way that he competes, and he is such a smart player. Purdue saw that. There are a lot of people that probably thought Braden Smith was too short, too slow. But Purdue said, no, he works for what we want to do. And as a result, you see what's happening. And he just got, as we talked about yesterday, another endorsement deal, now at $1.9 million. One of the questions that I have about Braden Smith is, and I don't know that we'll ever know this answer, I don't think there's any doubt that Braden Smith as a basketball player and as a point guard is the same player if he's running the offense for Duke, Michigan State, Gonzaga, whoever it may be. But is he the same? Does he have the same clear cut when you look at it? That's the alpha leader of the team of those other schools that have a wider abundance of flash style players, Cooper Flagg, those kinds of players. Does his national name recognition and platform stay the same at those schools as it does where he is clearly the guy at Purdue?
Is he a first-team All-American still at,
Correct.
Blue Bud?
Correct. Because he's a facilitator at those places, right? And he's a facilitator at Purdue, too. But there's just something about he just perfectly fit. He is literally the perfect Purdue player, right?
Perfect Purdue player, and I think a perfect Big Ten player as well, because when you think about it, just from, the league standpoint, you compare the Big Ten to the SEC and the ACC, those two are primarily conferences where they want to run up and down the floor, put up a ton of points. They're athletic, they're fast, and whatnot. And Braden Smith fits what Purdue wants to do of grinding you out, but they are also very good offensively, and you have to be well-rounded defensively as well because of how physical the Big Ten is compared to some of the other leagues.
That's true. Remember there was a time with the Big Ten, it was like, man, it's too physical and it slows everything down, and you know what I mean? And they're just the Big Ten gets into the tournament against everybody else, and then they get boat raced. That was a conversation for a while there. Elliot Bloom will join us, by the way, about 35 minutes from now, top of the hour, and we will get further into all of these topics. Also, we were talking about NIL and the transfer portal. It's free agency time, not in the NFL. It's college basketball free agency. Tom Izzo went off on it yesterday.
Hoosiers have another one in the portal, by the way.
Ooh, no, hold on. Don't tell me who it is. I will tell you this. We have Mackenzie Mbako, right?
Yep.
We have Malik Renew.
Yep.
We have Gabe Cups.
Yes.
We have Luke Goody applying for an additional year.
Correct.
So there's another one.
Yes, you're forgetting one that was already in the portal that was 2 days ago, maybe?
Hold on. Mackenzie Mbako.
Yep.
Malik Renew.
Yep.
Gabe Cups.
Yep. There's another one that was already in the portal prior to about a half hour ago.
So there's one or two?
Two left on your list that you have yet to mention.
Tucker?
No.
How often did this person play?
Every game.
Hit me with it.
Miles Rice. That was 30 minutes ago. The other player you're forgetting, Ja'Kai Newton.
Yeah, Ja'Kai Newton's an interesting one because I think he thought he was going to get a lot more time than he did. I think most people did.
He was a four-star, I think, recruit coming out of high school and then had injuries, like knee injuries, and then just never really got on the floor.
Now, Miles Rice, when it came to the transfer portal, the only thing he had to say about it was, you know what, I'm just going to take my shot. And they said, well, that's not a first, right? It must be the last 30 seconds of a game and you're going to put one up. Good player, and at the beginning of the year, I thought Jeff Rabjohns had a really interesting perspective about Miles Rice and how they maybe offensively were not putting him in a position to take advantage of what it is that he does. Good player, but at times I think Indiana fans, while they liked him, like to throw their hands up because it's like, dude, you're not the guy that needs to – he loved having the ball in his hands at the end of games and in key moments. No question about it. We come back. It's a big one for the Pacers. It's a big one for Purdue. We'll actually begin with the latter half of that, talking about the Boilers and Houston and what it is about Houston that you may not think about that could give Purdue fits, and it's not the first thing that jumps off the page about them. I'll explain next. you could, to pull up the statistics, the three-point shooting statistics, notably, of any team in the Sweet 16 not named the Cougars of Houston. So,
Okay.
you can go with, I guess, Purdue, if you want to look up Purdue. Fletcher Lawyer is obviously a very, very good shooter. We know that. But I'm curious. Let me know when you have pulled up one of the Sweet 16 teams and tell me which team it is once you pull it up. You can use Purdue if you'd like.
Okay.
Did you pull up a team in the Sweet 16?
Yeah.
Okay. And that team would be?
Alabama.
Okay. So, who is Alabama's leading three-point shooter?
Mark Sears.
What percentage?
His 3-point percentage is 33%.
And that's the highest percentage shooter on their roster?
He's the one who takes the most threes for them.
We're going by percentage here.
By percentage, you're looking at Aiden Holloway. He's at 41.7.
Okay. How many other players over 40%?
I believe he's the only one.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the only one.
Look up Purdue, or I can do it, but look up Purdue's statistical leaders in three-point shooting percentage and how many of them, who's the highest? I would assume the highest by percentage is Fletcher Lawyer.
Correct.
Okay, what is his percentage?
I know going into the last game it was like 46%. Now that I have it up, Fletcher Lawyer is shooting 45.1%.
Okay, how many others are over 40%?
Okay, so this is where it gets a little hairy. Like you've got CJ Cox, who's over 40%. Raleigh Burgess is over 40%.
Yeah,
Kaufman
but
Wren.
not volume shooters, right?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. Like I'd be able to adhere to CJ Cox a little bit.
Let me read you the University of Houston. And I know Houston defends the hell out of you. Like Houston, Kelvin Sampson teams, say what you want about Kelvin Sampson. And for me, Kelvin Sampson, I've always said, when he came to Indiana, I thought the guy was a scumbag. Not because of, and yes, people can sit here and say all they want. Yeah, but Jake, the rules that he broke at Oklahoma, those aren't even rules anymore. And then he broke them at Indiana. Those aren't even rules anymore. Okay, fair. But when they raised the speed limit from 55 to 70 on I-70, they didn't go back and retroactively take away all of your speeding tickets when you were doing 65 and a 55.
How many would you have off your record?
Oh, buddy. Literally, if we could read my driving record on the air for speeding tickets between 1991 and like 2008, and we would burn until the top of the hour. But come on, 49 and a 45, come on. But still, I was breaking the law. In Kelvin Sampson's case, what bothered me when he came to Indiana was not even necessarily the infractions, but it was Bob Kravitz that asked him in the introductory press conference, because he was still under investigation at Oklahoma in a matter that the NCAA had not yet ruled on, and those penalties could potentially follow him to Indiana. And Kelvin Sampson's answer when asked by Bob Kravitz about the recruiting violations for excessive contact, his answer was, that's a rule that we didn't take seriously. He didn't say that's a rule we didn't understand. He didn't say that's a rule we were unaware of. He said that's a rule we didn't take seriously. So in other words, he admitted right there that he knew he was breaking rules. Breaking rules almost unknowingly is one thing. Breaking them because you have complete disregard for them is another. And then he got caught breaking the exact same rules at Indiana after he had brought with him, as I have always said, he had to fly from Oklahoma to Indiana on Southwest because he had so much baggage and bags fly free. And he brought it with him.
Well, not anymore.
But you can, correct. But you can say what you want about Kelvin Sampson. He is a fabulous basketball coach. And one of the things that makes him a great basketball coach is if you're going to play for him, you absolutely have to guard. And you've got to defend people from the elbow all the way down, at three-point line all the way down. You watch a game against a lot of teams, and the point guard or, they're moving the ball around the three-point circle and a guy gets a pass and he's got a couple of dribbles and he's looking at whether he wants to pull up or set up something. When you're playing Houston, the second you get that pass, I don't care if you're 25 feet of the basket, there's a guy right on you. They defend all the way on every inch of the floor. But what they do is better than anybody in college basketball that I don't think we talk enough about. L.J. Cryer is their leading scorer. He's shooting nearly 43% from three-point range. Emmanuel Sharp is their second leading scorer. He's shooting 42.3% from three-point range. Their third leading scorer, 44% from three-point range. Fifth and sixth, 33%, 38.4%. As a team, they are a 40% shooting team from three-point range. Now, yes, if you want to, you can say, well, fine, but how many three-pointers do they shoot? It's within their scheme. I mean, this is not like everybody on their team has shot, well, yeah, they only shoot, 2 3-pointers a game. No. They shoot the ball. They are extremely efficient offensively. And then I think what happens is and I wouldn't say that Houston is necessarily a team that you look at because this does happen with some teams. There are teams that can score in such a quick pace and score so quickly. When all of it, the Pacers did this last year. The Pacers last year during the in-season tournament in particular and around the holidays last year when they really caught fire just heading into the All-Star break. The Pacers last year they could score so quickly that they took teams away from what those teams wanted to do because people started playing at a faster pace in order to try to keep up with what the Pacers were playing, and that took people's offense away from them without even having to necessarily defend it to take it away. Houston doesn't do that. Houston does play a slower style, but they can win high-scoring games. They can score when they need to. They can go into Kansas and go over 90. But for the most part, they want to keep the game in the mid to upper 60s, but they are offensive. They are efficient in their offensive sets. And then because they kind of grind down for offensive high percentage shots and they convert them, that then I think on the other end, the opposite happens. Teams get you can get a little bit hazed by that, and then they are all over you. You have to be so offensively sharp against them, and you have to make every possession count. This is going to be a huge game for 3 players for Purdue. Braden Smith being number 1 because he's got to be able to dictate and keep flow Purdue's offense to put the ball in operating areas where it's got to go. Number 2 would be Trey Kaufman-Renn. That goes without saying because he's their best offensive consistent threat. And number 3, truthfully, because of Houston's ability to dominate on the inside on both ends of the floor, it's probably a huge game as well for Caleb Furst to come in and give some of that freedom away from Trey Kaufman-Renn. But I'm telling you, now, can Houston be beaten? Yes. I do think they can. But it's a tall task for sure. I'd like to know how many fans Houston's going to have here, Eddie. What do you think? Does Houston have an alumni base? Have you ever met a Houston fan? Even
No.
people that live in Houston are like, nah, I like the Rockets. They're cool.
I don't think so. I don't think it. Yeah, no. Not any Houston Cougars fans, that's for sure.
I kind of liked him back in the day.
Ralph
They were kind of
Sampson?
fun back in the day, huh?
Is that Ralph Sampson?
He was Virginia, but he played at Houston. But Elijah. So you had a lot. Phi Slamma Jamma. I mean, forget about it. Phi Slamma Jamma was unbelievable. And the only reason they didn't win multiple titles is because they happened to be in college basketball in the exact same era as, well, I say multiple. They got beat by the Carolina State game in the pit in 83 with Lorenzo Charles. And then in 84, they come back. That team was unbelievable. And in 84, they ended up having to play Georgetown and Patrick Ewing. I mean, and Michael Graham went off. Michael Graham was kind of the unheralded player. You think about that 84 team with Houston. For all of the praise and ballyhoo, rightly so, it was one of the great days of my life for certain when Indiana beat Carolina 72-68 and 84, Jordan's Carolina team. And then Indiana turned around and got beat by Rick Carlisle and Olin Polonice's Virginia team the year after Sampson had graduated. But that was such a disappointment for Indiana to get beat in that game. And then you think about it, and you're like, but if they'd gone to the Final Four that year, it would have been Indiana, Kentucky with Kenny Walker, Houston with Elijah Wan, and Georgetown with Ewing. Indiana would have been so smoked in that was in Seattle that year.
That's
speaking of smoked in Seattle, there you go, right?
Yeah.
You're going there how soon?
20 days.
But you're not counting, right?
No, not at all.
Okay. But either way, Houston's been a great program. I still think of, when I think of Houston basketball, I'm old enough that I remember one of the McRae brothers for Louisville in '83 in the Final Four on a breakaway, and Guy Lewis, the Houston coach, throwing his towel out on the floor and getting a tech for it. They've had fun teams. It just doesn't seem like they have the fan base. But it's going to be awesome downtown because you got the Tennessee fans, the Kentucky fans, the Purdue fans. Brothers downtown, I think, is going to be the place for Purdue fans to go and watch games. People had asked about that. I think Brothers is doing a viewing party. Obviously, Lucas Oil is going to be the place to be at the game itself. 10 o'clock Friday night, so you got plenty of time.
Oh, no. 10:09.
Sorry, 10:09. Yep.
That is what is scheduled, you know. When do you think it actually tips?
10:48.
Really?
Nah, it's probably not going to be that late, right?
They're banking on 2.5 hours from the start of the previous game of Kentucky and Tennessee.
I'll bet they make it on time. I'll bet they get in there. 10:09. No, I'll say we should do a pool. I'll say 10:21. 10:21 is my guess.
So if the over-under on time of tip was before or after 10:20, you're taking after?
Yes, I'm taking the over. The after. We're going to talk more about that matchup with Elliot Bloom. Going to join us 18 minutes from now, Director of Basketball Operations for Purdue. When we come back, big one for the Pacers tonight. And there might be, you hate to say it this way, there is some very unfortunate news in the NBA that the Pacers may benefit from. You never want to see injury. But there's a key one, or two for that matter, in the NBA, and we'll get into it and how it could impact Indiana next. right?
That is correct.
Pacers in action tonight, taking on the Lakers at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Obviously, anytime the Lakers are in town, it's a big deal. I'm going to keep my score. I've not been able to see the hotel since I pulled into work this morning. But the crowd outside of the downtown hotel where the NBA teams stay, I'm putting right now 8.2 for the autograph seekers.
What would it take for a 10? A 10.
Taylor Swift.
10.
Taylor Swift.
Really?
Yep. I would say, okay, here's the other thing, though. You have to factor temperature into it.
Did you get what I was quoting there?
No.
Oh, really?
That's fair.
Varsity Blues?
Can you believe that I've actually not seen Varsity Blues?
Wow.
I know.
I think that's a first of something I've seen that's around your time that I
know. Well, I mean, it's kind of one of those movies, though, that you heard so much about it at the time that by the time the window passed, it was like, okay, although I should probably know that one.
You know, CJ, being the stand-up guy that I am, I didn't crucify you for not seeing Varsity Blues.
No, but that's different than not seeing Shawshank. Did you see the thing that's going around? The Big Ten Network posted it where they asked all the Big Ten coaches, what's your go-to movie that you've seen more often than any other? And of the 34 coaches that are now in the Big Ten, like 30 of them, it was Shawshank Redemption was their answer.
I did not see that, no.
Yeah.
Coincidental, don't you think, that I didn't see that?
What's that?
Very coincidental, I didn't see that.
Yeah, we still have to do our viewing party for it.
I know.
Okay, to get a 10 on how hot is the line, the hotel line, you've got to factor in weather. So if it's a pouring rainstorm or it's freezing outside and people are still, that boosts the score a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, it's nice. It's a little chilly, but it's nice outside. But there is a substantial gathering of individuals waiting for autographs outside the hotel right now. I can assure you of that. Pacers right now, coming into this game, are 2 games up on the Bucks for the 4 seed.
That is correct.
And this is of note because of the following. And this is, I mean, scary stuff, truthfully. And I know that the Bucks and Pacers are kind of this budding rivalry. It kind of, I still think the Knicks are obviously the Pacers' biggest rival. But the Bucks a year ago, that playoff series got pretty, chippy, and there was some stuff. But a lot of the key players in that are no longer around.
Specifically Malik Beasley.
Well, and Patrick Beverley, right?
That's also true, yeah. But who doesn't have a thing with Patrick Beverley?
Bobby Portis.
Yeah, he should be coming back soon for them.
He's been out and
with the suspension.
He's obviously an instigator for them. But Damian Lillard, it was announced yesterday, has been diagnosed with essentially a blood clot, a vein blood clot in his right calf. Now, I'm not a doctor. I want to be very clear on that, as if I need to be. But a blood clot is a very serious matter, and I'll tell you why. Because a blood clot obviously can move within your blood to one of 2 areas where then it becomes very problematic. I mean, the lungs would be one, a pulmonary blood clot, and then the other would be if it gets in your heart. I can speak to that, for certain. I did not have a blood clot that moved to my heart. I had a blood clot that was created in my heart. But either way, no bueno. Now, when you have blood clots, or if you are somebody who has condition, or you can, have that sort of an issue, there are 2 things that come into play. Number one is I don't know that there's any definitive timeline on when blood clots can dissipate. That they can give you all sorts of medication and things like that, but the timetable is very uncertain. So it is unfortunate, truly. It is unfortunate for the Milwaukee Bucks, for Damian Lillard, for basketball in general, that would be what sidelines a player. In addition to that, when you have either have blood clots or you have the potential to blood clot, then you go on blood thinners. And that becomes its own difficult circumstance, because I can tell you firsthand, when you're on blood thinners, you bruise so incredibly easily. Now, that's not a huge issue, other than probably more often than not cosmetically. But in the beginning, in particular, when I was on the highest level of blood thinners, there are medical things that come into play. I mean, you have to be careful with your level of physical activity just based on the fact that you bleed so much more easily because your blood is made to be thin, obviously. So for Lillard, there is no real known time as to how long he's going to be out. And I would anticipate, though, just based on all things going into it, I would anticipate that he's going to be out a while. Now, the other thing, Eddie, comes down to this. For Milwaukee, that is obviously a key element to what they, who they are. But then Giannis also is dealing with a few different ailments that has kept his availability to some limit over the last couple of weeks and still is in question from game to game, correct?
Yeah, he's out tonight. He's been dealing with a multitude of injuries the last couple of weeks, a knee injury. Right now, he's dealing with a foot issue. He is out tonight for Milwaukee, so it becomes even more important for the Pacers to win this game tonight because Milwaukee has the head-to-head over the Indiana Pacers, so if in event of the two teams being tied with the same record at the end of the regular season, then Milwaukee will have the advantage over Indiana in the standings. And I think when you look at it, Jake, it'll be important for Indiana to have that home court advantage just because of how good they have been at home in 2025. And obviously, you want to have more games at home because it gives you a better chance to win. But right now, you'd be matched up against Detroit, and those two teams are gridlocked because of how much they trail Indiana by. But Milwaukee has the head-to-head or the advantage over Detroit in the Eastern Conference standings because of percentage points. So right now it's 4th Indiana, 2-game lead over Milwaukee and Detroit, 5th Milwaukee, 6th Detroit.
I have – Detroit worries me a little bit. I think of the two, I would still rather face Detroit than Milwaukee if I'm
Really?
Indiana.
I would rather face Milwaukee.
I mean, listen, let me go back to what I'm saying. I would rather face Detroit than Milwaukee, and I'm going with under the assumption that Giannis and Damian Lillard are both available by the time the playoffs rolls around. If those two are out, obviously that changes everything totally. But the Detroit is just young enough and athletic enough to kind of not know that Detroit could be the Indiana of last year. A team that gets in there and all of a sudden it's like, here they go. And Cunningham is a very good player.
Yeah, I think Detroit matches up better with the Pacers, though. Like, from a defensive-wise, like if you look at how they could defend Indiana between Cade and Malik Beasley, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren, they match up well with Indiana, whereas I feel like Milwaukee doesn't really match up well because Turner always seems to have good games against Milwaukee because they always play drop coverage and pick and rolls with Brook Lopez, so it opens up the pick and pop with Turner. Tyrese is faster than most of the players on the Bucks because they have a little bit of a bigger lineup. They don't really have many guards that can defend him, so it's easy for him to get inside and kick out and spray it out to three-point shooters. And I think with the way Aaron Nesmith has been playing the last 2 weeks, I think it's an advantage for the Pacers because they should be able to get whatever they want offensively because of the mismatches that they have with the Milwaukee defense.
By the way, blood clot, the same thing that has Victor Wembanyama out for the year.
Correct. He had that in January.
Chris Bosh, remember, that kind of ended his career, but there was a lot of Chris Bosh, there was always controversy as to whether or not he should play through it when he had one. So, this is not unprecedented in the NBA by any stretch of the imagination. As for Lopez, I always forget which Lopez it is that's good. One's good and one sucks, right? Robin's out of the league, right?
Correct, yeah.
And Brook's the good one. Brook Lopez, you know what? Brook Lopez, I might have mentioned this last time they were here. He looks like the one-armed man from The Fugitive.
Yeah.
You've seen The Fugitive, right?
No.
Okay. He looks like the one-armed man in it, though. If you see The Fugitive, when the one-armed man makes his appearance, you're going to say to yourself, that guy looks just like, I think Sykes is his name in The Fugitive. And Brook Lopez looks like him. And he's got bad hair. But he's a good player. Really good player. But tonight, 7:30, again, that game can be seen on the FanDuel
TV?
Sports Television Network. Yes. And, of course, you can hear it right here on this radio station.
I was talking about The Fugitive TV series, movie?
Movie.
Okay.
Harrison Ford. The Fugitive is one of those, Eddie, listen, we got to have a movie marathon. Which of the two?
This just proves my point, Jake. You're finding ways to try to hang out with me more outside of the show because
that's not the case.
You really enjoy my company.
Actually, it's more this. there are certain areas where I feel it is my role and my duty to bring you up to speed within, again, I shouldn't say pop culture. These are things from 30 years ago, so I can't blame you for it. But I think you would enjoy them. The Fugitive is a great movie, and it's got a great soundtrack. Shawshank, though, is, I mean, what we're talking about here is, The Fugitive is a solid, what are we going with, NBA players here?
Sure.
Who's the best player in the NBA? Who's unequivocally, without question, the best player right now in the NBA?
Jokic or Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I think it's neck and neck.
Okay, if you're going with long-term legacy in terms of like their sustained greatness, I would say it is LeBron, obviously, amongst current players. And people can argue with me all they want on that. Shawshank is LeBron. Shawshank isn't even LeBron because LeBron is polarizing, and there are people that would tell you he's overrated. No one would tell you that Jordan's overrated, so Shawshank is Jordan. And then The Fugitive's a solid Barkley. Like a great, not in the all-time, not like nobody would say in the top 5 all-time, but nobody would question the greatness, right? Elliot Bloom, I'm told, was a great shooter in high school at Mount Vernon. Now the director of basketball operations for Purdue, and our next guest. Going to have Matt Painter on. Those are always good conversations coming up after 3 o'clock today. One of the guys that works right alongside Matt Painter. I would go so far as to say Matt's chief lieutenant, if you will, is in his 16th year as the director of basketball operations at Purdue. And much like myself, Eddie, Elliot Bloom and I have something in common in the fact that our respective careers began with 1 year at the University of Kansas. Elliot's launched with far more success than did mine during my disastrous year of the Hindenburg and Lawrence. But nonetheless, Elliot joins us now on the always crowded and available for your company to sponsor guest line. Elliot, I'm sure a very busy time, man. Good to talk to you. How are you?
Great, man. How are you guys?
We can't complain. It's fun, man.
Yeah, it's a great time of year. It's probably an unprecedented time of year for everybody in our business right now, obviously, with the portal opening up and kind of the last days of NIL opportunities for players until the revenue share agreements kick in, which is supposed to happen here in a matter of days. So it's a quite an unusual time for everybody in college basketball right now, whether you're playing or you're not playing.
And is it so? Let's begin with that, Elliot. Is it from your standpoint, and I'm sure your colleagues as well? I don't know how much you talk to people in your position at other programs because you all are kind of navigating these waters as they're rising up at the same time. But
right,
do you anticipate that a lot of that stuff, that this is going to be the outlier year where it is non-regulated, and then eventually it's going to get to the point where there is more of a roadmap? Or are we entering into the frontier that is now forever going to be the Wild Wild West?
I think everybody's in pretty lockstep agreement that this is the final days of the Wild West, at least for the short term. Now, does that mean in 4, 5, 6 years a lawsuit pops up and everything gets kind of blown up again? Who knows? But I think for the next few years we're going to have much more of a stable system in place, and there's going to be a lot more stability in the marketplace, so to speak. And that's, I think, welcomed by just about everybody. I think there's over the first 2 days of the portal, over 1,000 kids jumping in, and the kids that go on to high-profile places that do well, it's great for them, and it's great for the teams that get them. And the stuff that kind of slips through the cracks is, you've got a lot of programs that have kids that jump in the portal and then come back, in 20, 30 days back to the head coach and say, hey, any chance you can take me back? And those are some of the stories that, and in some cases the coach is like, well, no, I moved on. I got other guys because you told me you were leaving. So those are kind of some of the stories that fall through the cracks sometimes. And, I think everybody would welcome a little bit more stability down the road. So hopefully when we're sitting here at this time next year, it's going to function in an entirely different way.
Elliot, I've wondered this, and perhaps you can answer to this, even though portal stuff, you guys have had guys that you've used the transfer portal, and certainly feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. But the outside perspective is that Purdue has used the portal to maybe simply accentuate or finalize a roster as opposed to be reliant on it. I mean, I think that goes without saying. But
yeah.
I'm curious of this. I've always said this. If I was a player in my last year, I would find the school with the best academic reputation possible and say, you know what? I know I'm not going to play in the NBA, so I don't even need NIL money from you or whatever else. But if I'm going to come to your school, I want you to accept every credit that I have accumulated so far, and I'm going to take my last 12 hours at Harvard or Stanford and then get a degree from there. I want you to honor the credits that I'm transferring in. That's how it would happen. A regular student wouldn't be able to do that. How does that happen in terms of the university honoring the credits that are coming in from an academic standpoint from a player that is now on school, third school in 4 years?
Yeah, well, a couple of scenarios. Sometimes you get kids that have already graduated, so you're getting them in a
yeah. I mean, I understand that, right?
But in your situation that you just described, certainly that is a big plus to be able to come as an athlete, transfer your credits. Now, depending on your major and what school you're at, what school you're coming from, sometimes not 100% of those credits would transfer over. So sometimes there's a little bit of work that gets done on the back end by the academic side of things. That okay, like look, 80% of these are going to transfer over and you're good to go, or 100%, and then you need X amount of hours to get your degree. That a lot of that stuff usually kind of works itself out, and if somebody ends up being a little bit short, there's a chance to make that up kind of after your eligibility is done as well. And certainly, if you were going to a place that had a little bit more of a prestigious degree than others, if you're talking about the Stanfords and Harvards and places like that, I'm not sure if some of those would transfer. I know some of those schools have a little bit of a harder time getting transfers, and it's for that exact reason that you just described. But certainly if you're, at the end of the day, everybody that gets into a portal or looks to leave a school or go to another school is doing it for different reasons. Everybody's got their own story. Everybody's got their own reasons for transferring and wanting to play somewhere else or leave a place. Sometimes it's a pure basketball decision. It's, hey, the coach didn't play me enough, or I don't fit the system, or they got better players around me, or whatever it might be. And sometimes this situation is it's about basketball, but then there's a lot more to it. Our case with Lance Jones joining us last year, here's a young man who basically had his degree from Southern Illinois. He knew he wanted to try to play somewhere in the Big Ten because he grew up in Evanston in Big Ten country, and he wanted to go somewhere where he could make the NCAA tournament. He said, I've played 4 years of college basketball, and I've never been on a team where I saw my name called on Selection Sunday, and that was a big deal to him. And he wanted to go somewhere where he could contribute to a team that won at a high level. And so, as we were discussing what he was looking for, all the boxes just started getting checked off. It's like, man, this kid is all about the same things we're about, and so it worked perfectly. And sometimes depending on what teams need or whatever, sometimes you don't have the liberty to sit there and make every peg fit the hole. Like sometimes you're trying to just fill a roster. And so you're just grabbing guys that are available. And I think, everybody can reference over the last couple years teams that have added a bunch of players in the off season. And then everybody sits there and says, well, there's no doubt the roster's talented, but does it mesh well? Do all the pieces fit? Are they all on the same page in that locker room? And then you see teams that kind of come out of nowhere and have great years because, all the pieces did fit. And then you have teams that maybe underachieve according to their talent level. And it's just, that's the beauty of a team sport. And, why do some teams overachieve that maybe are at smaller schools or at maybe what people would perceive as less talented rosters? Well, the pieces fit together really well. They have great attitudes. They play for each other. They overachieve. And the same can be said for the teams that are really talented that underachieve. So it's one of the tricks of coaching in this day and age is how do you get 18 to 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds to kind of all buy into a common goal and try to go out and accomplish something that's bigger than any of the individuals.
I would think Elliot Bloom is in his 23rd year at Purdue, 16th year now as the director of basketball operations, joining us on the show. Here's the thing. You have to utilize in your position, I assume, you've got to be able to sell a player on the fact that they can get NIL money by playing at Purdue. But at the same time, you've done a remarkable job of getting players that understand that they're playing for Purdue as opposed to NIL. That's a balancing act that I would find to be very difficult, and it seems as though Purdue is the outlier now in having managed to brilliantly balance that. How big a challenge is it?
It's a challenge. You have to really work hard to find the fit. And we would say the same thing about high school guys. You got to really work hard to find high school guys that value the same things that we value as a program. And look, our guys are not going hungry by any stretch of the imagination. Like I know that there's this kind of a perception that, our guys are just getting a scholarship. Our guys do quite well. We just don't go around beating our chest and putting it all over social media all the time. But at the end of the day, our core recruiting pitch is still more of a traditional recruiting pitch. Now, NIL is a big piece of that. There's no question about that. But at the end of the day, we still sell the value of a Purdue degree. We still sell the fact that you get to play for Coach Painter and develop as a player and as a young man. And so you're equipped to you're going to be equipped to go to the NBA or Europe or wherever that is, as much as you're going to be able to be equipped to go be a high school basketball coach or a Fortune 500 CEO. We're going to do the whole thing here. And, you get to play in Mackey Arena, just under 20 times a year and run out that tunnel and experience what that's like. And then the thing that we always talk about is that you're going to be part of something bigger than you, the Purdue basketball family, for 50, 60 years of the next 50, 60 years. Like, when you're done with us and your eligibility is done, we're not done with you. So we have so many guys over the years who have played for either Coach Katie or Coach Painter that, okay, they go play overseas and now the ball's done bouncing and they're trying to get into the real world. And their contemporaries have maybe a 12-year head start on them because they went into the workforce right away. And, you play overseas and you play professional for 12 years. Like, where do I start? Like, how do I get in the door of a company and, make decent money? And that's where we come in. And so we've had quite a few instances over the years where guys are out in the real world and need some help getting going or whatever it might be. And, having a network with Coach Painter and some of our alums and some of our former players that step in and help these guys, it's a pretty powerful thing, and it's a real thing. And it's one of those things that, when you leave here, you're, like I said, we're not done with you. We're going to take care of you the rest of your life, and you're going to be part of something bigger. I think that gets lost a little bit. If you're a guy that played 3 or 4 different schools in 3 or 4 years, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, everybody's got their own journey, and we're not sitting here saying that our way's better than anybody's. But our guys, when they leave here, know that they have something to come back to. And, we sell that dream of, like, you want to be able to walk back to campus in 15, 10, 20 years. If you have a family, bring them back to campus and walk in Mackey Arena when you're watching one of our games and you show the people with you, you point up to the rafters and show those banners and say, man, I was on that team. Some of my best friends to this day are on that team. And, like, that to us is, how do you put a value on that? So maybe if you're coming to our place and you're turning down a little bit more somewhere else, we think that all those things I just talked about have a pretty significant value to them.
But Elliot, Elliot Bloom is the guest here. He is the director of basketball operations at Purdue. Boilers and Houston, 10:09 tentatively scheduled for Friday night at Lucas Oil Stadium in the Sweet 16. When you look, Elliot, at when you're recruiting a player, or maybe even before you recruit a player, okay, can you, and I guess this is advice that can work for anybody in any walk of life, but I want to know the Purdue secret here. When you are prospectively looking at a high school player, tell me something that you look for that is the red flag that tells you that's not a Boilermaker.
That's a good question. Well, without giving too many ingredients of the secret sauce out, honestly, there are some things. I mean, we want competitive kids. We look for that. That's a value that Coach Painter really looks for in the people that he recruits. We do personality tests with people that we're recruiting, with everybody that's been in our program, and there's a way we can kind of tell what values you basically are your top values. And we look for competitiveness, because you're in a day and age where a lot of people, when the going gets tough, the instinct used to be like you dig in and you fight and you get better and you battle for your position. So if you come in and there's 5 guards on the roster, 6 guards on the roster, we're starting 2 or 3 of them. So, the old school mentality was, well, I'm going to work my ass off in the summer and I'm going to get better and I'm going to try to get one of those starting spots. Now with giving extra flexibility through the portal and other things and outside influences, now instead of trying to stay and fight for it, maybe you jump ship and go somewhere else and take the path of least resistance. So I think that competitiveness is a big deal for us. We want guys that want to be competitive. And then guys that, again, kind of value the things that I talked about earlier. I know some of it's kind of a, cliched and boring stuff, but if you're willing to kind of put team above yourself, and, there's a way to chase both personal dreams and team dreams at the same time. I think we've proven that. We've had our fair share of guys drafted, had our fair share of guys go on, have individual success, play at the next level, and they all achieve those individual dreams along with team goals and team dreams as well. So if you can find people that are kind of have that mindset, and then also too, just the people that are around the guys that we're recruiting. If they're kind of about the same things we are, it's usually going to work out pretty well. There's got to be a trust level, and if when we get down the recruiting trail with somebody, if the family's trusting us and sees our vision and our plan, it's usually going to work for them. If there's outside influences and you're going to listen to those influences about, boy, you're getting screwed here. They could be doing this better. They could be doing that better. A lot of times we don't even get in those situations. Our coaches do a really good job of trying to find out the entire picture when we're recruiting somebody. And if we feel like there's too much drama involved, there's been, I could list some names that people be like, boy, you guys walked away from him. You had a chance to get him.
Go ahead and list them. Let's go.
Yeah.
Come on. Just give me a couple, Elliot. Nobody's listening. Give me a couple.
Yeah, we're not going there. But there'd be some people be like, wow, like you had a chance to get that dude and you passed. And look, coach is in a good position, right? Coach Painter, he's been here a while. He's not he doesn't have a job security issue, things like that. He's confident in his coaching ability and how he runs a program. So I totally empathize with some coaches that maybe are fighting for their lives and battling. Sometimes you got to roll the dice on a dude and you got to say, man, I know there's a lot of red flags here, but he's just too talented. I still got to take him. I get that. I understand that. But we're not in that position. So we're able to say, look, we're going to pass on this guy who's really talented, but has a lot of red flags to go for a guy that we think is more of a kind of a quote unquote company man that can develop into a really, really good player for us.
You've probably seen, I'm sure, Elliot, it's probably been tagged on your timeline 1,000 times in the last 24 hours. The graphic that went around showing both the starting school for each starter in the Sweet 16 and then as well the home state of each starter. And that kind of, all of a sudden, I was looking at that, and I'm looking at the replies to it. And I'm seeing all these people that have nothing to do with the Big Ten or Purdue or the state of Indiana that are saying, man, hats off to Purdue. Hell, let's go. I kind of like Purdue here because it's the anomaly. You're the only school in the – Michigan State has done a good job with this as well, but you're the only school in the Big Ten where all 5 of your starters began their career at Purdue. And then, obviously, the state of Indiana is highly represented on your roster. How much pride is there in that, in just looking at that and being able to see tangibly to your eye – the proof of stability and loyalty of program?
Yeah, there's no question that we've all seen that, and we all have taken pride in that. What it tells you, it affirms what you're doing is it works for guys. It affirms to us that you can kind of have it all if you really make some sacrifices. And I look at a guy like Trey Kaufman-Wren is the perfect example. He's a guy who came here, got hurt in the Indiana All-Star game, broke his finger. We ended up redshirting him his freshman year, and he's a guy who kind of, he was behind Zach Edey to a certain extent, played alongside him, but a dude that just believed in, man, if I just put my head down and work, he trusted us in the process. Good things are going to happen. And now look at him. I mean, he is a dude that is as good a post player as there is in the country right now and doing big things. And is going to have a great senior year as well. And so it is pretty cool to see that because there's a lot of ways to get a successful team on the floor. And again, we're not trying to sit here and say that our way's better than anybody's. Everybody does it different ways, and that's fine. This way just happens to work for us, Purdue, and the way our coaches are. And it's the way Coach Painter wants to do it. And I think the other thing, too, is after you assemble teams, you need somebody that can take the pieces year in, year out and make them work. And that's where I think Coach is as good as anybody, if not the best in the country.
Do you anticipate
– changing year to year. So.
Do you anticipate seeing some guys on your roster go into the portal?
Potentially. I mean, I don't think we know that for sure. I think that, there's certain guys we feel good about. I think there's some other guys that we'll see. That stuff it's gonna happen pretty quick after we are done with our season. We'll have, as we do every year, we'll have exit meetings and kind of talk about things, and then we'll obviously get a better idea at that point. But yeah, I mean, we've had guys leave before, and guys that leave for a variety of reasons, and it's interesting because even before this was as prevalent as it was, we had some guys over the years that left our program and Coach Penner and I joke about it all the time. I think we lead the country in leaving tickets for former players that didn't finish with us, and having former players that didn't finish with us come back to Purdue basketball reunions. Like we'll have some, like if people were, if outsiders and fans and stuff came to our basketball reunions, they'd be like, why is he here? He didn't even finish his career here. And like, well, yeah, but we still consider him part of the family, and he's back, and he's welcome anytime. I think that would blow people's minds sometimes. Sometimes guys leave and we'll talk to them and be like, yeah, totally get it, man. Totally understand. Like, wish the best of luck. Don't lose our numbers. If you ever need anything, let us know. It's been very few instances where guys roll out that we're like, boy, we just don't see why you're doing this, but best of luck. That's usually not the case. Usually it's like, okay, we get it, and it's obviously your decision. We wish you the best.
What jumps out at you about Houston?
Boy, just the physical bodies and defensively, obviously, that's, I think he probably is the most underrated coach in college basketball. I think. I mean, I know a lot of people give him his credit, but they're so tough and they're so good defensively. It's going to be handling their physicality, trying to keep them off the glass. Not breaking any news with those statements. They're just their toughness and their just ability to put you in a bind defensively is what kind of is their calling card. That's what he's always done, and he's got one of the better offensive teams he's had in the last few years, which makes them, I think, even that much more dangerous.
I mentioned this earlier, Elliot. Elliot Bloom's our guest. They lead, I believe, the nation in three-point shooting, so it's hard to say that they would be underappreciated in that regard. But I think the Kelvin Sampson calling card is, pardon the pun there, but the Kelvin Sampson mantra would be defensively. But do we overlook how efficiently they can shoot from the outside, in particular, forcing you to get caught up in trying to match their three-point game?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good statement. I think that they're because they're so elite on the other side of the ball, sometimes when you do other things, it gets overlooked. And let's be honest, like not to knock your contemporaries, but there's how many quote unquote media people are there now with the advent of social media? Like there's all these people that are supposed experts, and so what happens a lot in our sport and in sports in general is that one or two lines get thrown out about an individual or a team, and then that just gets in an echo chamber. And so, like with a team like Houston, it's like, if you're listening to a guy doing a 30-second soundbite on his Twitter feed, well, he's going to say, defensively, the top team in the country, and then like they move on. And that happens with a lot of people. Those who really know, and the kind of what you're getting into is, this team is a lot better on the offensive side, and that goes underlooked a lot because they're just so elite defensively.
By the way, you are correct. There are a lot of morons on my side of things, right? But like you, Elliot, I'm the outlier, right? I mean, like you guys, I'm the outlier. I mean, you know this, right?
Absolutely. No, hey, there, and I'm being serious. I've known you a long time. There are, there are guys that, I mean, I'll be honest. I think a lot of our staff we're on social media. We're not living in a cave. You kind of got to know what's going on, and unfortunately, with the way newspapers are run nowadays and things like that, you got to get your news somewhere. The issue is that you have to be able to understand that a majority of people, I use this example all the time, if somebody, and we tell this to our players quite a bit, if you're walking down the street and a guy came up to you wearing a G-string and a pink tutu and started just saying crazy stuff to you, you'd probably just kind of like try to get away from him and then have a little laugh about it, 5 minutes later. And I tell our guys, it's the same dude on Twitter. That's the same dude.
No question.
He's got a different handle. He may dress his feet up to make it look like he's an expert. But, you got to kind of learn to block that out. But there are still some back to your original point, there are still some people that I really value what they say. Most of the time it's these, old school basketball writers that have been in the game for a long time, guys like yourself at the local level that, when you weigh in on something or comment on things, I do value that because I do value your opinion on things. The more I've been around some guys on the local level and the things, their takes on things matter, and I think that you've always offered good perspectives on things, especially in our I still consider Indy my home, and especially things in Indy and this state. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm kind of like a Houston player from three-point range. I'm at about 40%. I mean, if you really want to know the truth in terms of my social media. But Jimmy Howell did send me a message that said you were a great. He didn't put good. Great in all capital letters. Elliot Bloom played for me at Mount Vernon. Great shooter, he says. So you had some touch. So, hey.
Well, it made up for my total lack of being able to move laterally and guard people. So he is actually he's right. If I had one thing I contributed to his teams over the years, I could shoot a little bit. Coach Howe was a elite coach, and very thankful I got to play for him. 11
3-point shots in the old lapel gym for Elliot Bloom in one game. Still a school record, by the way. Lastly, Elliot, everybody and their brother has asked me this, including a couple of guys in G-strings and pink tutus, but in the old days, quote unquote, back in our day, if you will, one of the really fun things about the Sweet 16 and then the Final Four would be the public practices that could take place where people could come out and watch just kind of a shoot-around walkthrough at Lucas Oil. Several people have asked me if that schedule is out or if Purdue will be doing a public one at Lucas Oil on Thursday. Do we know yet?
So they did away with the public stuff at the regionals. So first and second round is public. Regional sites do not have public shoot-arounds anymore. So that was a change that happened probably, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. Now, there is an open one at the Final Four for the fans, but the regional sites do not have the open practices anymore. So that would have been a really cool thing on Thursday for everybody to kind of come out, but unfortunately, those are not open to the public. They do open the first 15 minutes to the media, and then the media have to go, and then we have a closed session in Lucas Oil.
Okay, so there we go. So once you get through Indianapolis and you're on your way to the Final Four, that will be the opportunity for people to be able to watch a practice. 2 games, obviously, to go before that takes place, but we certainly wish you the best of luck in it, Elliot. I really appreciate the conversation and just kind of the transparency and clarification of – and look, I mean, you know this, man. I've said this 1,000 times. I've had the great fortune to be able to come and watch a couple of your guys' practices and just see the way you do things. And I understand the rivalries in this state, the passion people have for different teams and those sorts of things. But I have a great respect for the way Purdue has represented the conference and notably this state, and doing so on the biggest of stages. And it's absolutely a kudos and a credit to Coach Painter, yourself, and the rest of your staff. So wish you the best of luck this weekend against Houston, and then potentially moving beyond that, of course.
Well, we really appreciate it. And we appreciate just I think most of the people on our staff and everything grew up in this state. And whether it's, the high school basketball tournament, Colts, Pacers, I wouldn't say we're necessarily all in on some of the other teams that we compete against, but we certainly wish the best of luck to people in this state. And there's a certain amount of pride if you grew up in this state. Everything from the Indy 500 to the Colts getting going in the fall, the Pacers, and their upcoming playoff run. We're pulling for all those guys, and we hope that people pull for us, and we can kind of add some joy and some happiness to some people who are following our team and our Purdue fans. So appreciate you having me on.
All right, appreciate it, Elliot. Best of luck to you. Elliot Bloom, the Director of Basketball Operations for Purdue. It's really interesting stuff, too, about the NIL and just the portal in general. And as he was saying, maybe this is the last year of that in terms of kind of the Wild Wild West version and variation of it. But that trickles down, and it starts now where the way that schools look at things of using the NIL money or the portal to put players in position, knowing they may have them for only a year or two. The other side of that, I guess, would be at the smaller level and where it's non-existent but can be used to recruit and say, if you come here, we'll be able to put you in position. Pat Knight is in that situation, for example, at Marion. He's going to join us about 30 minutes from now to give the perspective on what exactly takes place at that level and how they use it to get players into the Division I variation, as it's just, again, a lot of balls moving around in the air with it all. Alex Palou also, by the way, now 2 for 2 in IndyCar, joins us an hour from now. Really appreciate that from Elliot Bloom and for the people that reached out to comment on it as well. I get it. I totally get it in terms of rivalry and the dislike that, I mean, I went to Kansas my freshman year, and I saw, for Kansas, believe it or not, if you were to ask a Kansas basketball fan who their biggest rival is, Eddie, would you like to guess?
For Kansas?
Yes. If you go to Kansas, the University of Kansas, and just their fan base in general, their arch rival, this has probably changed a little bit because of conference realignment.
I honestly have no idea.
Missouri.
It makes sense.
Because Kansas City, and I've mentioned this before, it's fascinating. Kansas City and Indianapolis are basically the same city. But if you were to take Indianapolis and turn it 45 degrees, or not even that, like one turn to the left, that's Kansas City, because the most populated and, the highest income per capita suburbs are all on the west side of Kansas City. But Kansas City, if you were to think of Indianapolis, and I liken it to Dean Road on the northeast side of Indianapolis, or like Allisonville Road. A road of that, I'll say, for lack of a better phrase, Michigan Road, except for that it's more on the east side of Kansas City. But literally just a 2-lane road is State Line Road. And in Kansas City, if you live in Kansas City, Missouri, you could live in a subdivision. It's not a major thoroughfare. The state line is just literally a 2-lane road that goes through subdivisions. So you could have a kid that his best buddy that lives right across the street that he plays backyard football with, one of them, they have different mayors, different governors, and different public universities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would assume, I don't know this, if I'm not mistaken by this, if you live within a certain zip code of Kansas City, Missouri, you can still get in-state tuition at the University of Kansas and vice versa. But nonetheless, there is this rivalry between Missouri and Kansas within Kansas City. So
Missouri?
KU, that's right. That's it. And the other thing about Missouri, by the way, the show me state, in Missouri, in St. Louis, and more so St. Louis than Kansas City, but they refer to a white trash redneck is called a Hoosier. So they'll say, they're like, so I get there and they said, oh, dude, I was just at the grocery store and this total Hoosier was standing in front of me. I'm like, really? Where, Indianapolis? Where was he from? What are you talking about? How did you know he's from Indiana? What? Well, you said he's a Hoosier. No, he's a redneck. Oh, okay. But at any rate, for Kansas, Missouri was the rival more so than Kansas State. You would think it'd be Kansas State. Maybe now that's different because Missouri's in the SEC. But I get, like, in the state of Indiana, Purdue kind of gets the double whammy because Notre Dame fans in football can't stand Purdue, and then Indiana fans in football and basketball can't stand Purdue. And I understand and I respect why people have a hesitation to root for a school that is naturally their rival. And I grew up, I mean, it used to boil my blood to watch Purdue games. Mostly it drove me crazy back in the day when Mackey Arena was always so dark. The lighting in it, you could only see the floor. The Purdue games on Channel 4 just seemed dark and drab to me. And it reminded me of just, cold weather darkness. But also, they played so hard, and I was such an Indiana fan, and Gene Cady and all that, all of it drove me nuts. And as I got into, professionally speaking, my career here in Indianapolis, and I worked at Channel 6, I was essentially I spent a lot of time at Purdue games, both football, Joe Tiller, and the Gene Cady eras. And immediately, and it was interesting to me because I went up there with this preconceived notion that, this was the rival, or this was the darkness, if you will. The hospitality, the professionalism, and just the overall class of those programs blew me away. And yes, we have a responsibility to objectively opine on circumstances and games and everything else, and to not show favoritism. to an extent. It's a little different era than it was 30 years ago when I first entered into it. But now there is, and certainly in this capacity, my job is to opine. My job is to give opinion, not necessarily to be a fan and carry pom-poms. But I don't think that it is in defiance of that responsibility or role to tell people that the more that I am given the access or the privilege to witness the way Purdue does things, the more respect I have for them. And I think the one thing, I understand if you're a fan of Indiana, you don't want to see Purdue do well. I understand that. But if you're a fan of the state of Indiana, then I don't think there should be anything other than pride in the way that they go about their business and the representation that they give for this state. I just think it's uber impressive. But as for the portal, we'll kind of get you caught up on what players that you are fans of are their names in it, what schools are looking to add on. We'll kind of give a college basketball free agency glance next. You know, Eddie, we could go into a side business together. Don't you think?
What kind of side business are you talking about, Jake?
We could. Have I given you my $1 million side business idea?
Which one? There's the Quarry Gas and Gulp.
Quarry Gas and Gulp, definitely. Again, that's going to be on the Red Knuckle Audubon between Bedford and Washington, where there are no gas stops on I-69. Quarry Gas and Gulp going to have clean bathrooms. We're going to sell combos, dip, and fountain drinks. That's it, and gas. $1 million idea, but that's not it. Here's another of my $1 million ideas. One of these, somebody ripped off the idea because I saw it in the Dallas airport, and I couldn't believe it. And you're seeing it now in some of the bigger airports. And that is I literally, in Atlanta, I almost did this because I had like a 4-hour layover off of Red Eye, and I landed in Atlanta at 4:30 in the morning. And that is a inside the airport, small private rooms that you can rent by the hour that have, if you really want to, basically suites, a little suite that you can rent. And I know that the airlines have their deal, but I'm talking about one where you literally get a reclining leather chair where you can nap, a television, your own sink to wash and freshen up, and maybe even a small shower if you want. No funny business allowed. Only one person per suite. But I'm telling you, you could make big money on that. But my other $1 million idea, now this is seasonal, but I think it's a great idea. And that is coat check lockers at the airport. Because think about this, okay? It's December, and you're flying to Cancun. Well, you park your car in the whatever lot, and you get on that little bus, whatever else. You got a hat on. It's 10 degrees outside. Then you get there, and you're like, well, I don't want to have to wear – when I get off the plane, it's going to be 80. So you rent a locker in my facility at the airport once you go, right there. And then when you come back, and when you rent the locker, you can do it, like, say, via an app where you can lock and unlock the thing on your phone or whatever else.
That happened. So Olivia and I, a few weeks ago, I was probably actually now a couple months ago, we went to Columbus and watched the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Seattle Kraken play. And she brought in a bag, and which was weird in its own right, that it was quote unquote too big for a hockey game, but she can take it into a football game or a basketball game. Nevertheless, they had these, what you're talking about, Jake, big enough for people to put their jackets or their purses if you have one, that are too big to go into the arena. And then all it is on your phone, and you go back after the game's over, unlock it on your phone, door pops open, boom, get your stuff.
Now, this was at what airport?
Not an airport. This was at a sporting event.
Okay, yeah, at the event. Exactly, right? So you do, and I'm trying to think of where we were. I was in a museum. It might have been the Louvre. That sounds totally the wrong way, but one of the bigger worldwide museums that I was in once, and your bag and everything, same thing. You get the little locker, and it unlocks on your phone. The reason I say on the phone is because if you got the little key, like the old roller skating rinks, the little orange key, nobody ever would be able to remember that, right? And where
not at all.
Everybody would lose it. They come back and they lose it and whatever else, right?
And you're not going to lose your phone.
Correct. Or you simply, take a picture on your phone of the combination so you don't forget it. There are a number of players in the transfer portal. We'll begin with, and from the Indiana standpoint, it's, you don't know because of the fact that I would assume that Darren DeVries really hasn't even had a chance to sit down and kind of talk to his existing roster about who wants to come back, who's in, who's out, who he wants, etc. But we know this much. Malik Renew has entered his name in.
Correct.
Gabe Cupps. Gabe Cupps was rumored midway through the year, right?
But he has committed now to another school.
Okay, hold on. Now, I have not seen this. This was how recent? Did I miss this a couple days ago?
You were talking with Elliot Bloom when this came out. So
okay, I'm going to guess the school for Gabe Cupps. Gabe Cupps, a native of Ohio. Let me ask you this, Eddie. Is he going back to his home state?
Yes.
Okay, it's one of two schools then. It was long rumored that he would be going to Dayton.
That would be incorrect.
Okay. My second guess then for Gabe Cupps, is it a MAC school?
No.
Not a MAC school. Is it a Big Ten school?
Yes.
Ohio State.
Indeed.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, good for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he'll play much at Ohio State? He seemed to me to be more of a MAC player.
Not sure. We'll see. TBD. I mean, if a coach believes in him, then that might be the one thing that he lacked when he was at Indiana, is just some confidence.
Mackenzie Mbako has entered his name and also apparently is going to test the NBA waters. I actually think Mackenzie Mbako would be a really good fit for DeVries' offense because he is a very good shooter, and I think they like to have 4 and out, right? 4 guys that are all can shoot from the outside. Ja'Kai Newton also has entered his name, correct?
Correct.
And there's one more than him. Oh, Miles Rice.
That was today. Yes.
Is that all of them?
Yes. So to me, when I read into this, Jake, you hear about, let's see now, Mbako and Miles Rice a few days after the Darren DeVries hire. Does this mean that he's officially met with these guys and that means they're not on the same path
that would be
what they want from each other?
That would be a likely conclusion, but at the same time, there's a lot of it that plays in also of just guys. I understand it. I mean, I think there are some guys that are like, I'm just going to test the waters every year and see what's out there, right? And why not find out if there's an opportunity? The NIL, as we talked about with Elliot Bloom, and by the way, that interview is going to be up on the podcast center at 1075thefan.com. Really good insight into the way things are working now with NIL and the portal and the non-regulation of it right now. And for that reason, the kind of the wild it would stand to reason that basically any player would be wise to throw their name in just to see why not. I mean, if you are a 7th or 8th man somewhere and McNeese comes to you and says, well, we give you $500,000 to come here. Okay. I get it. I mean, there is an element of business to it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Are you buying this, by the way, Richard Pitino backing out of Villanova and then goes to Xavier?
I mean, I saw I know that he was reported to have agreed at Villanova, and then it was announced he was going to Xavier. I think I looked up the salaries. Sean Miller made 4.9 at Xavier.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Pitino was making 1.5 at New Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a statement here that last night I thought to myself before I looked up those salaries, and Eddie, you're going to think I'm crazy here. I actually think New Mexico might be a better job than Xavier.
You're probably not wrong.
Because of the number one, I've been to the Pit. I've been to Albuquerque. I mean, the Lobos, and they are huge there. Huge. And number two, you can win in that league. You're automatically in the top 3 in your league, and you can go to the tournament basically every year. Xavier's been a good program. Don't get me wrong, but that league is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the salaries, and so maybe Pitino Xavier outbid Villanova. I can't imagine that. Villanova's, an extremely wealthy and well-to-do funded school, but I think. And I've always liked Villanova. I have a ton of respect for Jay Wright, but it does seem as though, and yes, I know Raleigh Massimino was there, and they've had success, and they won a title before Jay Wright ever arrived. But it feels like the last 15 years or so, Villanova was as much Jay Wright as it was Villanova, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But, I don't know. To me, if I'm a coach, there's no way I'm backing out of leaving Villanova to go to a lesser school in the conference in Xavier. The only way you do that is if it's a football school and you're going to and you're trying to make it a basketball school now, and maybe it's a deal like Indiana where Villanova fans are going crazy for success again.
I think the pressures at Villanova would be tough because it's still expected to be. You go there and it's like, man, why are there not more players that are going there? They just won a national title, in the last. They've been nationally competitive, but I think Villanova, there's more pressure there than there is at Xavier. But I think both of them, it's a tough league to be able to re-jumpstart because of the style of play. I think the thing that makes the Big East difficult for a Xavier, for example, and that's why, to answer your question, maybe it's surprising he goes there. The players that you have to recruit in the Big East, you're predominantly recruiting against and out of the New York City, the Eastern Seaboard, and those areas. It's tough to get those players to come to the Midwest, and it's tough to get Midwest players to want to play in a league that plays an East Coast style. That's why, and I think Butler has the same challenge.
Lastly, so now it sounds like Kevin Willard of Maryland is going to be the next Villanova coach.
Well,
so
that was rumored to be that was who it was going to be, right?
Yeah.
I said last night I thought Chris Collins would be a good fit at Villanova. I mean, I didn't think that he was going to go there. He seems to kind of be Villanova to me is like Northwestern on steroids, basically. The transfer portal, by the way, the list of players in general. I mean, some of the marquee names that are listed within the portal itself are those that we talked about from Indiana. But it's almost impossible to just keep track. Virtually every Power 5 school has at least one or two players who have thrown their name in. High Point, for example, that just had a really good year. They've already got guys. Dalen Swain from Xavier is one of those that says he's entering the portal. I mentioned Mackenzie Mbako's entering the portal. There are several. The Indianapolis Star has a list of players from Indiana high schools that have entered the portal, and it's almost never ending. I mean, it's nonstop. And I get it. I mean, there are guys that are going to put their name in probably without even real interest in leaving the school that they're currently where they're playing, but you do it because you want to see what exactly is out there and where you could end up. Jalen Blackman from Miami of Florida, that's from here in Marion, puts his name in the portal, 7 points a game. Jaden Brewer that played at Ben Davis. He's at FIU, 14.5 a game. Somebody, I mean, he's got a chance to make money for certain. Somebody's going to come along and be like, hey, we're interested. Tay Davis from Notre Dame, Micah Shrewsbury, probably, I think Shrewsbury is still trying to establish like his footprint on that program, but 15 a game at Notre Dame from Warren Central now in the portal. One school that does not have NIL type stuff to deal with, but can be one that jumpstarts all of the portal stuff is at the NAIA level. And Pat Knight uses that to his advantage somewhat to recruit. We're going to talk to Pat next about how all of this is happening, how his year went, and get his thoughts on the Indiana hire as well next. 100% on me with our next guest that I did not queue up for you, Eddie, some Elvis music.
Way to be a team player, Jake, because I remember you two discussing the Elvis situation last time he was on
Completely
the
dropped
program.
the ball that we did not enter in Pat Knight with some Elvis music, but he just completed his first season as the head basketball coach at Marion here in Indianapolis and is back in town after vacation, joins us on the program. Pat, how are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
No complaints, man. It's a great time of year, right? I mean, the weather finally turns, the NCAA tournament, and for you, I wanted to bring you on because I think it's a fascinating conversation with all of transfer portal and NIL, and I think that people would look at it and say, well, that doesn't really apply to Marion because you don't have NIL money that you're throwing around and those kinds of things, but yet it kind of does because you can utilize the potential for that for players to get them to come play for you. Hey, you come play for me, you play well, we have a good year, I can get you D1 portal stuff because you can transfer in. But maybe that's me being presumptuous. In fact,
no.
Yeah, does it relate to you?
Oh, yeah, that's how I went about recruiting is on the G League. I will get you paid. Now, I'm not going to pay you, but I will get you paid. If you play well for me for 2 or 3 years, we'll get you to the next level. And we actually had a kid, Gus Etchison, who we inherited and then had season-ending surgery after 6 games. He's going up to D1 again. And I helped him get an NIL agent. I've talked to schools for him that have called me. And so I try to use it to our advantage because I'm not going to pay these kids. And we do have schools in our league doing it, but I mean, how much can you really give these kids at this level, And so I took it, my routes, I want to be the G League and get these kids to move on. And I should have more because we had, had to play a lot of freshmen this year because of injuries. And I'm playing on next year. Hopefully I got a couple kids on level. And some coaches don't like it that way, but you have to embrace it. So my deal is I want my guys to move on because actually that means I had a pretty darn good year if I had 1 or 2 guys that had a chance to go on to Division I.
How would you assess your first year? I know that you guys had some injuries and you're probably like Norman Dale, right? Like all of a sudden you're like, look, I'm getting to know the guys and trying to figure out who they are, and you were shorthanded a little bit. But how did year 1 go for you?
It was great. From a standpoint, we come in, we had to establish a new culture. Every coach does it. He comes in, they want their own culture. We got hired so late, so recruiting was pretty much done. And so, for me, it was fun because I got back in it. I wanted to start a program from scratch, and that's what we did. And we had a good – so how I look at it, we got the culture going the right way, and we got a great base with a lot of young kids. But now my first year really starts now because I got the whole spring and summer to work with these guys. I get to have – wasn't able to have camps last year. I get to have team camps, kids camps, recruiting. It's really my first year being able to fully recruit. And so from the first year, just establishing the base, working with the young guys, it could have been better. Plus, we get to see the landscape, what wins at this level, what wins in our league. And so I actually had a blast. It felt like being alive again. But now the work starts and recruiting's gone well, and we're really looking forward to next year. We really feel because we have 8 of our guys returning, and they all played a lot of minutes because of the injury situation we had. And so I think, we'll be able to make a huge jump next year.
How much Pat Knight is our guest. When you look at, right now, it's basically free agency in college basketball, right? And we talked to Elliot Bloom, who I know you know. Earlier I was talking to Elliot from Purdue, and he was saying that they're kind of operating under the assumption that this is the last year before all of this stuff kind of gets regulated in terms of how much you can give or NIL and portal and all of that. How do you assess it? Where are we headed here in terms of the way college basketball will look?
I don't know if it's going to get regulated. I mean, the NCAA hadn't done anything. People are being real chicken shit about it. So I don't know how – I mean – I don't see it getting regulated. I think everyone wants to pass the buck off to like our government, and have the Senate and all these people make the rules. I just think it's getting out of hand. I've heard numbers up to. I just had a buddy of mine tell me here 2 players, and I can't see it jumping up that much, but $5 million. And the highest I've heard is 2 when I was doing the scouting stuff, but they better do something quick though, and or it's just going to get out of hand. But the thing is, doing the scouting for the Pacers, we found out a lot of stuff behind the scenes and everything. And I remember the first year of NIL, I went to a practice, big time coach, good coach, knows his stuff. He actually told me that when he was part of the NABC, they took a proposal to the NCAA 3 or 4 years before that year, before NIL got in place, and wanted to give everybody $10,000. And he asked me, he's like, what would you've done with $10,000 in Indiana? I'm like, oh my God. I was like, everyone would have been happy. There'd have been no complaints. NCAA turned it down. So this could have been nipped in the butt, 10 years ago. Pay everybody $10,000. People would have been ecstatic. But now you don't do that. It's gotten out of hand. I mean, it's going like, that first year with NIL when we were out scouting and guys were, making 6 figures, 50,000 to 6 figures, and now you're in the millions. And if they don't put a stop to it, it's just going to get. I mean, guys are going to be making more in college than they can in the NBA or overseas.
If NIL had existed forever, Pat, what Indiana player would have accumulated the most NIL money in their time in Bloomington?
Well, so how far back can I go?
All the way. I mean, I guess McGinnis, if you want to go, but let's say in the Bob Knight era. Let's say that your dad was on board with it, right? And it was just the way it was. To me, there's one of 2 guys here.
Okay. I would say Scott May and Buck on that 70. Defeated those 2 years back to back, those 2 guys. Alford, and then the guy that would have broken, every record, though, would have been Damon Bailey.
No question. He'd have been hawking every car dealership in the state of Indiana, right?
Yeah. But then the great thing about Coach is our managers would have been making 6 figures. He made sure everybody got paid. And our managers would have been making 6 figures because he would have raised so much money. It was just like the 3-point shot. He was totally against it. They put it in. Okay. He just goes to get Steve Alford. And Jay Edwards, the guys that can shoot. And so he'd have done the same thing with the money. I mean, he'd been calling his boys like Bill Parcells and Tony La Russa, hey, donate me a couple $100,000 to the money would have been astronomical, and everybody in that organization would have gotten paid.
It's funny because I hear people say all the time, Pat, Bob Knight wouldn't have stood for this. And my argument is, no, if Bob Knight would have known that it was the way that things were going and it was now legal, he would have been the best at it because the competitive nature in him would have had it down to a science where it was a corporation, and Indiana basketball would have been the forefront leader and partnered with Adidas and et cetera, and would have been a machine. You agree with that?
Exactly. And now he would have bitched and complained, rant and raved, but then when it was all set in stone, he'd been like, okay, you guys asked for it. And then the thing he would have done that none of these coaches do nowadays, he still would have raised money for the school. He still would have made sure, money went to the scholarships, money went to the library fund. I mean, like you said, it would have been a corporation, not just basketball would have benefited. Every sport in the school would have benefited. I mean, he would have had so much money coming in that, like I said, that I brought up Quinn Buckner and I were talking about it 3 or 4 years ago. And when I mentioned to him, because he was like, coach would have hated this. I'm like, yes, at the start. But Quinn, he would have jumped on board once it got passed. And then when I brought up, I was like, Quinn, even the managers were gotten paid. He started laughing. He's like, you're right. He would have had it so much money donated once they passed it that Indiana wouldn't have had any problems when it came to NIL.
Pat, when you look at the NCAA tournament now, this narrative is out there, and I want you, Pat Knight, to opine on it because you would know. I mean, you are seeing this, as we talked about with Marion, in the fact that you're starting the springboard, right? You get a guy, a Gus Etchinson, for example. Hey, play hard for me, play well. I'll get you into D1 where you can get yourself some money, but I can't give it to you right now. Now, The thought process is then that a kid like that, if he starts at an Akron or a MAC school and plays well, now instead of staying there for 4 years and being able to be a one shining moment guy, he's instead going to Kansas or Duke or whatever by his sophomore year, and thus the tournament is losing its luster because you're not getting the Cinderella stories. That's the thought process. Is that an accurate fear?
I think it's a fear, but I think you still got to let it play out, because now the Akrons or, the Ball States that lose a player, they can still gain a player. They're going to go after kids that aren't getting playing time at a North Carolina or an Indiana. So I think you got to let it play out for a couple years, especially if they don't get this regulated. But that could happen. They don't do anything about it, that the rich are just going to get richer. The teams are just going to get stronger. But I still think it's too early to say that. But talking to some of the guys in the smaller schools, some of them have actually gotten smart about it. They realize the kids are going to move on, but now they're going after kids that are leaving the bigger schools. I mean, we're actually doing that now. We're talking to some kids at Division I schools. Hey, come play for us. We'll get you back to Division I. So that, to me, the main thing, you just got to embrace it and just figure out some way to win. I mean, that's the bottom line. You can't bitch and complain about it because it's here. But I think you'll see some of these schools figure it out. Hey, maybe I just go after but schools are coming down the NAIA and Division II levels too now, the smaller Division I's, and trying to grab kids and move them up. And so there's all different ways to do it, the junior college kids. But I still think there's still hope that there still could be some Cinderella stories, even with this NIL situation going on.
What was whether it be being around teams when you were a kid or as a player itself, give me your favorite March, and I don't mean like, winning the national championship. Like, give me your favorite tournament moment, just your favorite thing as a player or being around it, your best memory that you have of a special March moment that you either were a part of or witnessed.
It has to be basketball. It can just be fun.
Either, well, the latter one.
I mean, do you want me to be politically correct and be like, oh, it's this game, or do you want me to be like, hey, man, I could tell you, like, hey, when I went to the tournament, when I was at Lamar, but honestly, when my Indiana went to the Final Four in '87 to New Orleans, I'm 16-year-old and hung out on Bourbon Street for a whole week. That was unbelievable.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you're 16. They don't card anybody. You're hanging out with the fans. You're hanging out with the boosters, and just having a heck of a week in New Orleans. That was a great moment.
Now, hold on. Was your dad so locked in on, trying to shut down Mark Wade and
so you'll love this. So I go to first practice with my dad, walk with him to the arena, and after the arena, walk back with him. So we got there the week before. I do not see him until the night of the championship game. So 4 or 5 days go by. I walk with him to the championship game, and he's like, so how's your day going? How's your week been? And I'm scared, like he's heard that I've been out and about and partying and hanging out on Bourbon Street, it's been fun, just been, seeing the sights and everything, and had no idea that what I was up to. So
that's probably good, right?
I was so scared. But then when I got home, my mom had heard about it, and so I got the riot act from her, that I was out and about in New Orleans and just being, underage kid, Well,
who were you staying with?
So that's a great story too. So I roomed with the manager all the time on the road. So we get there, and Tim Garles, he does the rooming stuff. He didn't know that the corner rooms were suites at the hotel we were staying at. So I had a corner room. I walk in with the manager. I mean, it's 4 bedrooms, 2 levels, overlooking the river, And so my brother had two of his buddies drive down. They stayed with me. I had a buddy of mine from basketball that lives in Baton Rouge. He comes over and stays with me for a week. So we had this whole suite just for us for the whole week of the Final Four.
So you were more happy that they beat UNLV, not because you were going to the national title game, but because you got to stay in New Orleans for 3 extra days.
Yeah, we got an extra couple nights. My brother's actually called me up, asked me where we're going that night. And he's out of college and everything, and so I was treated like an adult for once because New Orleans, there's no age limit or whatever, and I mean it was unbelievable. Just that whole week, the atmosphere, being down there. I mean, you had the Syracuse fans, UNLV fans. It was just a wild week, and I got to be like a huge part of it because got to be in amongst it instead of just being in the hotel room, going to practice, back in the hotel room, hanging around my dad. I was actually able to enjoy it like all the fans were able to do.
Does this allow you, Pat, now that you are a coach, and obviously we're adults now, but does it allow you to kind of have the balance of understanding what young people, are going to want to do and should be allowed to do to socialize in college, but also at the same time to be aware of that line to make sure that it's not crossed for your players?
Yeah, I mean, I tell my guys they can take everything they've done and times it by 10, and I've done it. So it's not one thing they haven't done or thinking about that I haven't done. And so you have to let them learn their lessons, but then if you got to let them know where the line is crossed. And then if they do cross it, how bad is it? Because some of the things are just petty, if they get in trouble for little things, But, yeah, I think it helps us, our generation, because we've been through it. But now, the kids are kind of – thank God we didn't have social media or cell phones, back then. And so that's the other thing you kind of got to worry about as a coach. These kids just post some of the stupid things. And it's just, you got to be careful because that stuff stays out there. All this crazy stuff we did is word of mouth. Nobody has any video of us or anything to prove anything, really. It's just stories and word of mouth. But these kids have to realize nowadays that everything pretty much is filmed, and there's always going to be a hard copy of something stupid you did.
Pat, your thoughts on Darren DeVries of West Virginia getting the Indiana job? I'm sure people would like to know your thoughts and perspective on both the search and just where Indiana basketball is and the hire they made.
Well, I thought the search was great because everything was kept quiet. There was no leaks. Obviously, they did their due diligence. And, I don't know him personally, but when I was doing scouting for the Pacers, of course, his son was on our list. And so his son's a hell of a player. If he can come to Indiana, that surely helps. But everything I've heard and all the film I studied of his son, the guy can flat out coach. And so I think it's a great hire. I know some people get more caught up in name and the Ritz and everything, but I think the guy's going to do a great job. All I hope is he doesn't screw me over on the exhibition game and still plays Marion next year. So that's the only thing that I'd have a negative about if he doesn't play us in the exhibition game. But from a hire and being a former player, I think it's a great hire, and I'm here to help any way I can with former players or anything. But I thought it was a great, just how everything was handled. There weren't any leaks. There weren't any BS to the whole deal. And I think they did their due diligence. And I think what happened, the hiring of the football coach before proved that you don't have to just go get names that fans want. You do your due diligence and just hire a guy that can actually coach and get the job done.
Pat, I would assume, in conclusion here, Purdue getting set for the Sweet 16. I know, obviously, you are of the same, you played against Matt Painter, and I think the two of you guys got along throughout high school and those sorts of things. Do you stay in touch with them, and just your overall thoughts on what Purdue's been able to do?
Oh, I text him after all his big wins and everything, and I don't see him as much as I would like, just, because I'm not coaching at I was out of coaching for 10 years, but when I run into him. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. I'd have loved it if he would have came down to Indiana and coached. Did a Rick Pitino, coach Purdue, then Indiana. That's how much I think of him. And he's done a great job, building Purdue up really to what Indiana used to be. When my dad was coaching and everything. He does a good job recruiting in state. He doesn't get all these one and dones. He gets kids that stick around for 3 or 4 years, and he's just built a great tradition up there, just like Coach Katie did, just like my dad did, and now he's done the same thing up there at Purdue. And so I root for him. I always root for him, and I have rooted for him against Indiana when there were certain coaches in place here. I know people don't want to hear that, but
now which ones? Which ones?
I can't say. Now I will say it was not Woody. Woody's part of the family, so I was always rooting for Woody. But I will say there were times in the past where I did for Matt Payne. It's Indiana.
So for example,
I think of him.
For example, Pat, if this weekend you are rooting for Matt Painter against Kelvin Sampson, that is not the first time that you will have rooted for Matt Painter against Kelvin Sampson?
I plead the fifth. No, I love Coach Sampson. No, I think he's done a hell of a job at Houston. I just threw it out there, man.
I will tell you, his team's guard, man. Houston guards.
I've been in their practices. That guy is one of the best or the best defensive and rebounding coach I've ever. His practices are legit. And even with the NIL deal, we got to be careful with these kids, because you get on them too hard, they're in the transfer portal the next day. He still coaches them hard and gets after it. So it doesn't surprise me what he's done at Houston.
Pat, appreciate it. Congratulations on the first year being in the books for Marion. Look forward to talking to you again and watching you build the program there, but appreciate the time and perspective today, by all means.
And I just have one ask. Please, next time I come on, I don't need Elton John as my theme song. Can we get Elvis?
I can't believe it. That's 100% on me. 100% on me. Next time, it's Suspicious Minds is your favorite, right?
That's right.
Okay, we'll get Suspicious Minds for you. And by the way, since you're living in Indy now, I don't know if you've done it, Pat, but you got to pay homage and go down to, I think is it Fresh Time or whatever the grocery store is that's where Market Square Arena was. I'm assuming you've seen the plaque that recognizes that it is the site of the last ever Elvis concert.
Well, yeah, I got a picture of it on my phone.
Of course.
And then they got to. And by the way, the city needs to redo the plaque. It's kind of beat up now, and they haven't taken great respect of my guy. So if I have one choice, could our mayor do a better job of preserving the plaque?
When I become the mayor, that'll be on the list. I'll get some Brasso and go out and take care of it.
All right, buddy.
All right, appreciate it.
See you guys.
Pat Knight joining us on the program. We come back. It's a big one tonight for the Pacers. Speaking of the arena, not Market Square, but Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It's the Lake Show in town. We'll preview next. 2 for 2 in the IndyCar Series. I mentioned Pacers-Lakers tonight. We'll preview that coming up just a couple of minutes from now. But first, Alex Palou joins us on the show after winning at Thermal Club. That is outside of Palm Springs, California. And for the third time, I'm going to mention this to Alex Palou because I continue to be amazed by it. It was like 90 degrees. You're in the desert. And I mentioned before the race to Alex Palou, and then I mentioned to Alex Palou in Victory Circle, the dude did not sweat once. Now, I don't know if that's just because the air is so dry, we couldn't tell. But Alex Palou, who joins us on the show, you were just so calm, cool, and collected. Have you celebrated yet the fact that you've won for the 13th time in IndyCar?
Thank you so much for having me on the show once again, guys. I've obviously celebrated a little bit. It's been an amazing start of the season. I would say the best we had so far in all the years I've been in IndyCar. So celebrated a little bit, but not too much. I mean, it's a race, so we're just getting started.
You know, I've asked this before, Alex, of drivers, and I don't know the answer. I mean, which is why I'm going to ask you. In track and field, you can tell that somebody they run faster than the next person because they're stronger. They have, they're more lean, whatever it might be. And in football, you can tell that a guy is stronger or hits harder than other players. What is it that makes you locked in? What do you do? What is your skill set that differs you from the competition that allows you to win a race beyond simply having a fast car?
I don't know, man. It's tough to say, right? Like I don't really know. I've only been on my on my shoes, right? So I don't really know what other drivers do to prepare or how they feel before a race. But I mean, a part of obviously having an amazing team around me that helps me look good on track, honestly, with all the preparation they do, with how they prepare all the cars and so on. What I do or what I feel that I do, it's only preparation, just trying to be prepared. I'm been feeling really, really confident with the car that I have now. I'm just getting started.
Alex, when you're in the car itself, now thermal, for those that are unfamiliar, is I don't think there's a lot of elevation change to it. It's a relatively flat track, but it's, obviously it's hot. The track can get a little bit slippery. You won there last year in an exhibition non-points race, but I'm curious, do you see, when you're driving, can you see the way that I'm going to use the term line for those that don't know racing, when you're going into a corner, can you envision the shorter way through a turn, how to slice down, if you will, the curving of a turn to get you through that area of the racetrack faster? Does that make sense, what I'm asking? And is it something that your eye sees that the average person would not?
Yeah. I mean, we, as a racing driver, you've been through so many different corners, so many different, power balances that you feel what's best for your driving style, and you can see where to go to try and get a little bit more downforce or a little bit more grip. I think it also depends on the kind of track. Like thermal, for example, was a track that was very bad for tire deck, and it was actually the biggest talking point that we had throughout the weekend. And actually, there were some corners that you had to kind of brake straight, do like a V shape that we call it, which is like brake late, brake straight, and then get the car turned so you wouldn't slide too much. And there was other corners where going behind cars was better to just cut a little bit and do a little bit less meters so you could slide a bit less as well the car. So, I mean, I think all the racing drivers in IndyCar have that ability compared to a normal person, and I think that's what we learned throughout our junior years for sure.
I'm going to go back to, I've probably mentioned this to you before, Alex Palou, but I'm going to go back to something here. I remember this, you would not. But in your rookie year, you were driving for Dale Coyne. You'd come into IndyCar. You had qualified really well at the 500. I remember that. And then at the end of the year, I think that might have been the COVID year maybe, and so the schedule got jumbled around, and it was towards the end of the year we were at Mid-Ohio, and I remember asking you, hey, so what do you have for next year? And you said, man, I right now I don't know. I don't know money wise, team wise. I don't know what's going to happen for me. And at that point, your future was in great question. Somebody else came to me and said, look, Alex Palou's the real deal and is going to be around for a while, and I'll tell you why. And they said, in the vast background that he has, he raced in Japan, in a series in Japan that a Super GT car is the most challenging for a driver to be able to handle, and he handled it flawlessly, and that's what leads us to believe that he's going to be a great driver. That person that told me that was Mike Hull, who's the managing director for Chip Ganassi Racing. Would you agree with that in terms of that car or that series being the one that most allowed you to show what you can do?
Yeah, honestly, I learned a lot in Japan. I was in Japan in 2017 in Formula 3, and then in 2019 in Super GT and Super Formula. And it was amazing. Everything that I was able to learn there, it's actually the only series, a part of IndyCar, that do refueling throughout the races, so kind of prepared me for that. And then the cars are really fast, honestly. So, I didn't know that Mike told you that. If I knew, I would have been a little bit more confident at Mid-Ohio. I don't remember our conversation with you, but I do remember that Mid-Ohio was actually a tough weekend because I remember that some seats were announced that week, and I knew that my options were going less and less. And fortunately, I ended up with the best team and the best car for 2021.
Well, and it's interesting because since then, Alex, you've gone on obviously to win 13 races out of your 82 starts. You're a 3-time series winner now, but yet it seems as though you have the same thirst, the same drive and motivation that you had with that uncertainty at Mid-Ohio. How have you not lost that?
No, I'm gaining more and more. It just feels more fun each day that I'm here. For me, it's a privilege. It's a dream. My dream was to be part of IndyCar. Then once I accomplished that, was to get wins and to fight for a championship. So I'm doing that. I'm just living my dream every day, and even a bad day driving an IndyCar or being part of IndyCar, it's a really, really cool and fun day. So that's probably why I just keep on being allowed to do the work that I love the most and to work for it. So yeah, I'm just very happy to be in the position I am today.
The majority of the audience listening right now, Alex Palou is our guest. He's the driver of the number 10 DHL Honda for Chip Ganassi Racing. He is 2 for 2 on the year in winning races in IndyCar. The majority of the people listening right now, Alex, they're very familiar with the Indy 500. But it's an overall sports show, so maybe they don't watch IndyCar week to week as often. They have seen you flirt with, from winning the pole to battling with Castroneves, being at the front at Indy. And there's so much emphasis on that particular race. Is it a fait accompli that you will eventually win the Indy 500? And how much does being so close to it but not having it start to drive you now?
That's what I want. I can tell you that it's my goal for this year. It's been my goal for every year, and we've been close. We've been really close, actually, in 2021, finishing second behind Elliot. But who knows, man? I'm doing my best. I'm doing the best I can to try and be prepared to do that. And I feel confident. But who knows? There's been some drivers that never got it and for sure deserve it, or you would expect that they would have won. There's some other drivers that you would never expect and won that race. So I'm just working as much as I can on a personal level, and I think the team is doing even more to try and have fast cars, and hopefully we can win it this year. Would be amazing. Otherwise, next year or whenever it comes, we'll be ready for when that door opens for us.
Lastly, which requires more dedication? Your weekends when you're at the racetrack trying to win a race, or when you're at home and you are experiencing being a first-time dad?
I would say when you're a dad, yeah, because I mean, racing at the end of the day, it's all the race weekends are the same. Like you have practice, you test a couple stuff, then you have your qualifying, then you do the race. You need to save some tires and some fuel while still going fast. But being a dad, it's different. Being a dad, you never know if it's going to be a sprint race, if it's going to be an endurance. Suddenly she starts running and you don't really know what to do. So it keeps on changing. You're never ready. Always feel ready and you're never ready. So I would say it's tougher to control a young kid for the first time than to race, for sure.
Up next on the schedule, the place that I think actually kind of looks like your home city of Barcelona, Long Beach, California, a couple of weeks for IndyCar. Alex Palou will try to go 3-for-3. No pressure in that to start the year. Alex, a pleasure as always. If you win at Long Beach, we're going to drag you in to talk to us again, but certainly appreciate the time today.
I cannot wait for that. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
I appreciate it. Alex Palou joining us on the program. I'm telling you, when you want to talk about folks, athletes that are locked in, I mean, after that race, Davey Hamilton on the radio network and just everybody I'm talking to and walking around seeing at Thermal, it's like, man, this guy is just completely on a different planet right now. Totally in a zone.
It's almost like, in Major League Baseball or in football where a team is just hot and they're way better than the other team, and they're like in baseball, for example, the offense may be playing around for like 5 or 6 and they're like, all right, boys, it's time to get serious. They rattle off 4 runs. Next thing you know, they're up 4-2 and then they coast to win.
It's exactly how he races, yes. I mean, he once he took the lead, you heard the call there, by the way, Michael Young, Nick Yeoman, and Mark Janes on IndyCar Radio with our work this weekend. As soon as he took the lead, it was over. I mean, there just was – he started I think he started third in the race. The Christian Lundgaard, which is Pato's teammate, was second. Award started first. And once they waited for Palou to pounce and he made his pounce, it was over. He took the lead and long gone. Pacers, Lakers tonight. Who's in, who's out? We will let you know next. Mentioned it earlier, you can gauge how big a game it is for the Pacers by the new metric that I go by, the how hot is the hotel line. Man, that's probably the wrong word because then it sounds like some sort of a red carpet deal. But I'm going to rate it. I think for this game, I rated an 8.2 in terms of the downtown hotel and the number of paparazzi, if you will. And by that, I mean fat guys in sweatpants to their nipples carrying things to get signed by particular players to put on the internet.
What was it that Elliot Bloom described some of those people as?
Got somebody in a G-string and a pink tutu.
Yes.
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 Little of that as well, right? And you can see it when I drove in this morning. Already people were packed around the corner to try to get a view of the Lakers and Luka. And, listen, the reality is this, whether you want to admit it or not. If you take politicians out of the equation, because it goes without saying that world leaders are going to have world fame. But if you take politicians out of the equation, LeBron James is one of the top what number of people in the world in terms of fame? 15?
Yeah.
I mean,
I was going as far as say 10.
Possibly, yes. I think that's entirely possible. He may be. I have no idea how much film is international. I don't know how famous Denzel Washington is around the world. I mean, I would think very. I don't know, though, because you have, in India, for example, they have their own, Bollywood, they have their own division. It's not to say they don't watch movies there, so that's really naive of me. But basketball, in terms of sports that are produced out of the United States, basketball is number one in terms of international draw. I mean, soccer is the most popular sport in the world, but in terms of the American professional sports and of the big three, basketball is globally the biggest, and LeBron's been the biggest name for 20 years. He's got to be. So there is, I'm telling you, I've seen it with, and you've heard me say it, the Showtime Lakers, the Bird-era Celtics, the Jordan Bulls, the LeBron Heat, and the Steph Warriors. Those teams, when you are in their presence, there is an electricity, there's a buzz in the building that feels different. And it comes tonight to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. 7:30 tip, by the way. 7:30 is the tip time tonight.
Pre-game coverage on this station starts at 7 o'clock.
And it is televised with the Pacers television crew that you're used to also. So you can watch it where you would normally watch games with Chris and Quinn and
Jeremiah
JJ
Johnson,
and Eddie Gill.
yeah.
Yes. In terms of the availability of players, Luka and LeBron, it has not been consistent that those two have played with one another in Los Angeles, but I believe both are a go tonight. Correct, Eddie?
I believe so. It is a front end of a back-to-back for the Lakers. They play tomorrow night in Chicago against the Bulls, so that would be on the Lakers' mind for tonight, maybe. I don't know. I think both of them are going to give it a go. They have lost 3 consecutive games. Right now, the only players on the injury report for the Lakers are Rui Hachimura and LeBron James. Nobody on the injury report for the Pacers. As for LeBron, listed as probable, as he's still kind of recovering from that left groin strain. And then Rui Hachimura is dealing with a knee issue, but he is also probable.
It's remarkable what this guy's done, though, at his age and still playing at the level that he is. 25 points a game, 52% from the floor, 8 boards per game, 8.5 assists per game. And he's 40 years old. It's pretty remarkable. Probably some medicated cream that goes into that. I have no idea, but nonetheless, very impressive. And people can say what they want. They can say that I'm wrong all they want. I have a great deal of respect for the guy.
Jake, I think to go off of that, to be in the NBA and have a career as long as he has at the level in which he's played at, with the microscope that he's under, every single step that he takes on this face of the earth and the planet Earth, there's not been one report,
I know,
one story,
that's what I've always
one
said,
allegation about him getting into it with some fan, cussing out somebody. There's never been any drama around his family with Savannah or any of his kids.
You're preaching. I totally agree. In the world, look, we live in an era and in a world where when you are at the top, people want to, bring you back down. And when you are the epicenter of the cultural world, and yes, I understand, politically speaking, he's been outspoken. I know that he's polarizing in that regard. I respect all of that. But in terms of just his character as a human being, to your point, every single human being on earth essentially has a video camera in their pocket in his presence. I remember once the time, the real epiphany I had was I was in a restaurant in Tampa probably 10 years ago, and it just so happened that Alex Rodriguez was in the restaurant. I didn't realize that until I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I looked up and Alex Rodriguez was walking towards the back of the restaurant to use the restroom, and I watched it. And as he walked past tables, it was like watching dominoes fall. Every time he passed a table, people at that table immediately got out their phone and were videotaping it. And I thought, everywhere he goes, he lives in a fishbowl where people are videotaping it and wanting to find something that is of question, that is questionable. And they couldn't, right? Or well, in Rodriguez's case, yes, there have been things. But in LeBron's case, I'm saying they haven't so far. I mean, in terms of anything completely insipid. Comments that they didn't like or of question or stepping into an arena that maybe was not his area of expertise, sure. But in terms of inappropriate family-type behavior, yes, I would agree with you, Eddie. JMV has walked in. Big show lined up,
John. Going
John?
to the big Laker game tonight, are you?
I am.
Oh, man. Everybody playing? Everybody healthy?
That's what we were just talking about. As of right now, everybody's listed, yes.
Everybody's good. So, yeah, Matt Painter's on today. That'll be good. So that's coming up at the 5 o'clock hour. We'll get ready for the Lakers and the Pacers tonight. Going to have a busy couple of days. Major League Baseball's real regular season starts tomorrow. I don't know what the Reds are going to do without Stu Fairchild. That's a bummer.
The Dodgers.
What are you talking about?
I think they
did?
Yeah, they designated him for assignment, I believe.
Oh, I missed
that. And he's
that.
out of options.
I thought the Dodgers started the regular season 2 months ago in Japan against the Cubs, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not really a big fan of Stuart Fairchild. I just kind of mentioned that. But yeah, for Reds fans, you would know. Lance McAllister was really good about the Reds yesterday. We talked about that at length.
How's he feel about him?
Well, I forced him into liking them to win the Central, but I don't think he really thought that. Kind of.
Brewers going to win the Central?
No.
The Reds. Are you excited about tonight's game? You like going to the Laker game?
I do. There's an energy and an atmosphere about it that's pretty cool.
So I saw the Pacers and the Lakers back in 1982. I think it was February of 82 at Market Square Arena. And my dad took us in his van. He kind of had after post-divorce sex van back then. And he picked up me and my friends, and GC drove up 37. We got pulled over between Bloomington and Bedford for giving the finger to cars.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Brian Rodacher did that during our field trip to the International Festival in 5th grade. The school bus got pulled over by a cop on Capitol.
Did you know you could get pulled over for giving the finger to cars?
Well, I found out when Brian Rodacher flipped off a cop.
Oh.
And so the cop pulled over the school bus.
He saw us flipping off other cars. Or as the dorks say, flicking. They say flick. It's always flip. It's not flick.
Were you going with just the finger, or did you go with the one arm over the other
no,
at the elbow?
we're in middle. See, I never did any of this, like the Eminem middle finger like this. I just always just did straight that. So.
And you were how old?
Way to do it on the camera, John.
12. 12. We were all 12.
Okay.
And, and the cop stuck his head through the window. My dad's driving this van, this Chevy van. I mean, it's right out of the 70s sex van. And he said, those boys back there are giving inappropriate signals to cars driving by. And then one of my friends in the back goes, no, we're not. No. Like, started talking
We're
back.
just giving them the finger.
So, very appropriate. So,
best.
on the way. And then Kareem played in low top canvas Adidas. and I think crossed the half-court line maybe 5 times.
Yeah, totally.
He did not engage on the defensive end.
Kareem lumbered up and down the floor a la Karl Anthony Towns for like the last 8 years of his career, yes.
But he was playing in low-top canvas Adidas.
Beautiful.
Like one step above Tracks. Seriously. They look like Tracks.
Right.
Yeah, but Adidas had their logo on it. True story.
You know, I have a poster from back then of Dominique Wilkins.
Yep.
You know what shoe he was wearing?
Brooks.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, the most uncomfortable shoe.
Spud Webb wore ponies, right?
Yep, and the most uncomfortable shoe, signature shoe by any athlete of all time is Akeem the Dream Olajuwon's Etonics.
I remember those, yep. How about James Worthy had New Balance?
Yep.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I bought a pair of Bo Jackson cross trainers like 5 years ago. Those are not the most comfortable.
Walter Payton had kangaroo.
He did. I got a pair of Ruse too, man. He wore the Ruse headband and all of it.
You keep your change in that pocket zipped up there.
That's exactly right. Yep. All right, J&B's up next. Matt Painter are going to join 5 o'clock hour. Thanks to Pat Knight, thanks to Alex Palou, and thanks to Elliot Bloom for joining today. And for you, thanks to all of you for listening to Query & Company.